Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, whenever you're listening to it, or evening, whenever you're watching us, or listening to us on the playbacks. Welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing live show number 295. With me is the ever-presently wonderful Miss Adele Goodman. Hi, Miss Adele. And also
Hi,
Mr.
Lauren.
Dean
Hi,
Schmidt,
Dean.
which we
guys.
caught her in her Connecticut digs.
In my yoga clothes.
You look good in anything. We're all good. We were kind of doing a little bit of a warm-up discussion to a little bit of what I was hoping today to dive into a little bit. We know for months we've been talking about what we should be doing, what we should be planning for, what we should be reconstructing. We make the analogies. It's like a car race. We're all under a caution flag. So now when the car's off the track, let's do all the big work that you can't do when the race is running. And we're kind of past that to a certain degree, I feel, in the sense that we're now about action and reaction, unfortunately, as to what's going on in the market. The optimism that things are accelerating for our industry to begin to come back. By the same token, the skepticism that there are still so many things we can trip up on. And then a lot of businesses, those are very strong financial choices, that there is I have a certain amount of money that we've been able to linger to by being, very frugal about how we operate and everything through this process. When do I begin to consider what I do with it to restart the growth business and take on the demand? And I know from our discussions in Clubhouse that we've been doing, I know from our discussions in the show that we've been doing, and even on our podcast, all of us reflect in different ways, is there's a lot to consider. We have labor issues on lots of different things, good, bad. Can we get them? Can't we get them? There's a lot of influences to that. A lot of people that normally travel for seasonality can't and don't and haven't. We also know that there's monies, people coming back and they're not as happy with what they're willing to be paid to, and the benefits aren't there. And we they're trying to do what we used to do, which was, stay around for 6 months and we might give you benefits. This is the baseline, take it or leave it. And you can't get people to come work for that right now because there's people that have left the industry. So anyway, I've probably made as broad of a stage as I can. We could probably put two orchestras on the stage that I laid out, but I'm leaving it to you guys. What, from just kind of that kind of topic in that direction, what do you all think? I mean, where are we for what you think? Hey, go right ahead, anybody.
From where I am, I see still a lot of hotels that are still closed. And, it's hard. It's very hard to make that decision. You wish you had the wherewithal to just go in with gusto, because you know that if you do reopen, you should really open with all of your amenities and features to give that experience. But it's when you don't have it, it's very challenging. And when I say to people, I know you really need employees, why don't you just pay them a couple of dollars more? They can't. And I don't know whether that I can't is coming from a true I can't, or they just haven't been willing to explore, other ways of making it happen. What can maybe be sacrificed more than employees and labor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're kind of committed to that for the long term out too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just not a temporary, I can do this for a while. It's like once you make that choice.
But I think that in a certain way, sometimes you have to say the past is the past. And we're probably never going to be able to go back to that wage scale. And we just have to, if we want to be in hospitality where we're very labor heavy, we either have to find ways to be less labor heavy or more efficient, work on our processes, and instead of working on expecting, to give wages that do not actually support a lifestyle that may include, family members and things that people need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the challenges that we run into, and Lauren, you alluded to this, is we are kind of slaves to our data for the most part. And unfortunately, our data is, I've said it before, it's crap. right? You certainly can't use 2020 data as a mainstay. Can't use 2019 data as a mainstay. Even what you've seen so far in 2021, you can't really use as a trend. You really kind of almost have to look at what's going on the last 7 days. And yes, you compare it to those other things, but it's all very relevant to what's going on right now. And that's one of the reasons that I always emphasize that anything that you do, if it was, I would want to have everything up and running. We're talking about digital marketing in particular, but even staffing and all these things. You've got to have all that in place, maybe conservatively, but at least conservatively, because at least as long as you've got that open right now, you can start looking for some of those key performance indicators, some of those buying signs that are out there. If you don't have the door open, if you haven't at least showed up to play, you have no data. You've got nothing to look at whatsoever. And right now we're really in a place where we kind of have to combine that science of data analytics with the art of managing it. And art is sometimes gut instinct, and sometimes that requires looking at the news articles in the morning, seeing what's going on, looking at, is it sunny outside, whatever it may be, right? But we've got to be able to combine those two and do it with a great deal of adaptability.
I'm putting a little bit of a dark twist to this a little bit. Mr. Tim Peter, how are you this morning, sir?
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Tim.
Howdy.
We're talking a little bit about what I alluded to, just as a catch up, Tim, real quick, about adaptable, looking at the fact that we're at an interesting juxtaposition in comparison to times past versus future tense. And that is, we've been talking a lot about planning, preparation, opportunistically looking at ways to reconstruct ourselves during the downtime, as we keep referring analogistically. I don't even know if that's a word. That, while the car,
Close enough.
It is. It's a foreign word, and throw it in the dictionary.
English is a living language, Lauren.
And I'm making it grow. The idea that, metaphorically, that we are the race is on a caution flag, so the car's off the track. The time to do major work is now. Well, that is kind of I wouldn't say a totally past tense conversion, but conversation, but we're now in a stage of transition in the sense of when and how we begin to do what we need to do for the businesses that are beginning to represent themselves, whether it's, and then I pointed out the fact that for the hotels that were frugal and were able to save monies for the time that they feel that they would begin to emerge into their full marketing program and or their business models, they're looking for those trigger points. And the point I like to make is that we want to talk about the gray zone, literally. It's easy to make decisions when we can see the blatant wrongness, and it's easy to make decisions when we can see the blatant positiveness of this. Like, hey, if I'm getting 15-1 on an investment, let me throw some more money into it. If it's a 2-1, let me take some money out of it. But it's the in between parts where is the indicators enough? Is the intent and is the read enough? And that brings up to where I want to bring up this conversation point. I believe that there's been a couple of interesting things. One, we have other platforms we're hearing more people's opinions on. Clubhouse is a great example of that. From that, there is a lot of people adding to the white noise of opinion. Just, I have an opinion about this. The show is a representation of that. We all have opinions about what we feel is going on. But it also has exposed the irrelevancy of the volume of people's opinions, because people are looking for real, tangible ways of making decisions. And as a compliment to Robert, we talked about early on, in the green room, that Robert puts this newsletter together, and he's always pressed to do that in a time semblance to the show, because he is, frankly, a very busy person. And he's very busy because he handles construct data. He just can't walk into a room and go, I think it's a pretty day. He's the kind of guy that has to go in and actually show the numbers that this is the better day compared to the X number of thousands of other days he compares it against. And he has to have strong support to what he makes as statements. And the world needs that a lot right now. They need some engine. But then Dean points out very clearly, data's crap right now. If you're looking at just certain segments, you have to begin to look at a broader combination of datas to get a better interpretation. Anyway, that brings us to speed. Mr. Tim, please, what would you like? We've already shared our points of wisdom on that aspect, I guess, but what do you think?
Well, I'm going to share a link, and I apologize for doing this, but this was something I wrote for Hotel Recovery 2020, right? Our good friend Jason Fried's publication.
Yeah, Jason.
We spend a lot of our time, all of us, to some degree or other, trying to predict the future, right? It's part of what we're trying to do. And if you're in rev management, that's what you're trying to do. And if you're in marketing, you're trying to predict when will demand exist and where should I spend my budget and the like. And I have come to the belief over the last decade or so, not that we shouldn't try to predict the future, not that we shouldn't plan ahead, not that we shouldn't have good plans and do some scenario planning, but also if we know we're going to be faced with constant change, we really need to adapt our processes to the fact that we have to live with constant change, that there are going to be things we're not going to know, that there are going to be things that spring up on us. And if that's the case, the correct thing to do is not to try to predict what those things will be per se, but rather to set up our operations and set up our marketing and set up our revenue management to say, that's the world we live in. And how do we react quickly? How do we adapt quickly? How do we operate in a more agile fashion? So it's very much make plans. It's very much look at potential scenarios. What's your best case? What's your worst case? What's your, likely case? And then how do you adapt if you see the data moving you even further out past any of those, further away from best case, further away from worst case? One of the best pieces of advice I ever got, I may have told this story last week on the show. I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but I was telling somebody this the other day, and it might have been here. My first year at Wyndham Hotel Group, which was then Sendon Corporation, right? We had 15 mostly economy and mid-scale brands. And I ran our website. So I was responsible for our direct digital channel at the time. And we got caught flat-footed leading into getting the summer promo live. We're running around like crazy people trying to get content from the brand teams, trying to get imagery, trying to make sure the rev management team has said what the discount's going to be. It was just nuts. And we're coming up on Memorial Day weekend, and we don't have the website ready to go live with the summer promo. So at the end of the year, after we got the thing live and everything else, we sat down and did a little postmortem of what had happened and the like. And we figured out some plans and the like, and then the next year happened, right? And I joined literally like 3 weeks before Memorial Day. So, I came in late in the process, and I joined that role. And then the next year, the exact same thing happened, where everybody's running around, with their hair on fire. And I was sitting with my team, and my boss was in the room. And I will admit, I started off in a snarky kind of pissy place because everybody was in a bad mood, everybody was cranky, and I was certainly not helping the situation any. And I said, can I ask you a question? We're a leisure hotel company, right? And everybody's like, yes. And I said, how is it possible we got surprised by summer twice? Twice, right? Getting surprised by summer once if you're a leisure hotel company is a problem. Having it happen 2 years in a row, something is fundamentally wrong here.
You know what? Oh, go ahead.
I'll just finish this point, and then I will shut up, Adele. I know I talked too much last week, so I'm going to be good and not talk too much this week.
No, we like you to talk. Please talk.
But my team, folks on my team said, well, this always happens to us. The brands make us wait for this. The agencies do this. Yada, yada, yada does this. And my boss was in the meeting, and my boss said, so I have a question. If you say it always happens, why are you surprised when it does? Mm-hmm. We live in a world where, change always happens. We live in a world where mad disruptions always happen. We live in a world where, demand is hard to predict. If that always happens, why in the world are we surprised when it does? Why don't we set up our operations? Why don't we set up our marketing? Why don't we set up our rev management? Why don't we set up our housekeeping? Why don't we set up our whatever to adapt to the fact that that always happens? And that's really the point of that article that I posted a link to. And now, Adele, you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say, we all know when at the end of the previous year that next year we're going to have Valentine's and maybe Martin Luther King Day or President's Day. We know we're going to have March and spring offers. We know these things in advance, Labor Day, Memorial Day, all of it. And yet you can't get the hotels to give you the package 4 months in advance
Mhm.
for the PR. And we always end up scrambling and just barely making, maybe some online roundups. We just, no matter how many times you say it, no matter how many times this year we're going to plan in advance, it's just really hard to get everybody to focus on something that in their minds is so far away, even when they know.
And
you have a
given
content
that that's the
calendar already.
case, sorry, go ahead, Dean.
Or you have a content calendar all ready to go, and then it gets gutted because of something you didn't expect. It
Well,
happens.
And if that's going to be the case, then maybe what we ought to do is something different. We should expect, we should build that into the process to say that's going to happen, and thus don't think that this is the year we're going to behave entirely differently than we've done every year prior for 20 years.
Wait, what's that definition? That definition there's a definition of it, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The
And
definition of insanity, right?
I would even say, okay, so next Valentine's Day package is due the day after this year's Valentine's, or 3 days after this Valentine's. But you need your things to be timely. So it has to have a little bit of a smattering of what's happening now.
Right.
So that does make it difficult. But you know what I really appreciate more than ever is things that you can turn on and off on a light switch, things that you can set up, and you can increase your financial funding, or you can decrease it. You can choose to have less clicks, turn it off for a certain time period. That flexibility, things that you don't have to commit to a year in advance, and you can't limit it or turn it off or anything. Those are probably not the best things for right now, unless it's simply the low cost item anyway.
And I know
I love that flexibility, because we talked about some things having a return that's just 1 to 2 versus a thing that has a 16, and I can tell you for a fact that sometimes something had a 16 for me and later became a 3, and something started as a 5 and later became a 20. So it's you're not fishing in the same pond.
I have some suggestions to that. Mr. Robert, your ears must have been ringing. I was giving you compliments earlier, which means that must have been why you pulled up on the show. It's like a little leprechaun.
Of course.
And then poof, there he is.
Beetlejuice.
Don't say my name.
I said his name too many times. The next thing you know, Robert shows up. I do want to add to this, and Tim, thank you as always, because last week's your conversation actually inspired my concept about what I thought would be an interesting dialogue this week, and we're going right in that right direction. It's about changing the modality of what we're doing, in the sense of here's what we have been usually historically used to, in my personal opinion, of this. We're very linear in our decision process. It's like a domino effect. One starts the next, starts the next. And to exactly what Dean, you said about calendars, as soon as the initial deadlines don't happen, it cascades into everything else that doesn't get done, that was waiting in line to get done next. That linear aspect to problem solving. We didn't get our summertime programs put together, so now we're scrambling for which the time that we were going to be spending on our fall programs has been now delayed, because we're now focusing that time on summertime, and on and on and on, and repent. And then the other is that we are very much, and have been in my mind, very much about what is it doing for me now. If I spend the money and resources now, what do I get now? And what we're really talking about is the doing things that don't have the immediate return, that in the month, for the month. Gosh knows, I've had plenty of conversations with clients of, well, our numbers went down this month compared to, last month. Well, last month was last month. Let's take numbers that are more applicable. And this is back in a more perfect world of what was the same thing last year. Is this month in comparison to last year worse or better? Is a better comparison than saying the month of February versus the month of January if it's a seasonal change. You can't keep every month being positive. The stock market doesn't go up every day. It doesn't go up every week. It has its ups and downs. In general, it grows, but not every day. So the idea that what we're talking about building these things is about nonlinear growth, these aren't conditions. When you build an not org chart, but a Gantt chart on projects, you don't have a single line. What you have is time passing, multiple lines running, and lots of fragmentations of conditions that aren't connected all together in just one string. So changing that. Go ahead, Dean.
Oh, I was just saying, and you know, a wonderful example of that, actually, because I gave some thought to this after you brought up this topic yesterday. Look at some of the great comedians of our time. And I'm going to use Robin Williams, the late, great Robin Williams, as an example, a creative genius. But if you have an opportunity, go watch one of his performances, one of those big 2-hour performances where he's up there for a long time, and just analyze how he structures it. And most comedians do this. He's got a baseline of material. So here's the material I'm planning to use. He's got his creative genius material that's up here, and he's going to fill that in and plop that in wherever he sees fit and wherever it works. But then he's also got safety net material. And if you ever watch Robin Williams, he's got certain characters, certain analogies that are always his go-to and you can see that he's filling time in there. And those are the brilliant moments, because when he's doing that filling time, that's when that level 3 kicks in too. He's filling that time so that level 3 can populate in there. But he's got 3 different layers of content that he's working with at any given time. Hoteliers have to do the same thing. You've got your primary plan. Here's what I think I'm going to do, that content calendar, for example. Here's what I'd really like to do. And then here's my safety net just in case, right? And you've got to be able to work with all 3 of those levels.
Well, and part of that comes from rehearsal, right? And this is something I have strong opinions about. And it goes back to the Agile thing. You all know this. I think you all know this. I'm a trained musician. I was a classically trained musician, right? I went to college. I majored in voice, etc. And another great piece of advice came from one of my instructors, who said, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And what that means is not that you get it right in rehearsal every single time. It means that you practice in a perfect manner. You go about it following a process. You do the thing, and then you evaluate what worked and didn't work. And then you pick one thing that we're going to get better the next time. And then we do it again, working on that one thing. And then we evaluate what went right, what went wrong. And then you do it again. You pick one thing to improve and you do it again. One of the reasons Agile works, when people talk about Agile, we use the word Agile a lot, but there is an actual framework known as the Agile Development Framework, which is where this all comes from. One of the reasons Agile works is because you get into the practice of releasing frequently, right? If you're doing something once a year, no one should be shocked that it doesn't always go flawlessly, because you've never done it before, right? But if you're doing something every day, if you're doing something every week, if you're releasing something every single week, whether it's a marketing promotion, whether it's a content piece for your website, whether it is an enhancement to your booking engine, whatever it happens to be, and you're doing that every single week, you're going to get better, because you're going to learn from, as long as you practice perfectly, right? But you're going to get better. You're going to learn. And then, Dean, where it allows, and you're absolutely right, it allows room for improvisation, because now the things that spring up, you've got a good foundation to work from. We know how to do this thing. We know what we're going to say. We know what we're going to say. Oh, something's going to change this? Great. Let's just improv. Let's just riff on this piece. But all the other pieces continue to work in the way we do. And again, you're trained to do that as a musician. When people improv in music, it's not the first time they've improved.
Right.
It's a variation on the things you already know is where you start. And if you're doing it all the time, you have a body of work that you can draw from to say, maybe I don't have to create this from scratch. Maybe I just have to tweak this piece, and it makes you more adaptable. It makes you more successful. And you're absolutely right. That's exactly what Robin Williams is doing. He was Juilliard trained as a performer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go figure, right?
Yeah. No, he excellent insight to that, Dean, because when you do look at him, and you also, I would actually add another aspect to it too. He knew where he wanted to end up at, because a lot of his great routines came back at the end to the beginning. His Met performance was exactly that. He started, and it was so cool. And you're right. He was just all these things you described, and then at the very end, boom, right back to the beginning, and that's how he closed it. So I guess that's probably the strongest point of all this, and it is, I mean, an inspiration from our conversations these past few weeks. I feel, as always, especially being totally nose into these broadcast platforms right now, because that's what I seem to be documenting a lot of time with, is there's a lot of people that, to your point, Tim, are trying to determine to be either the first that say it. Oh, I told you it was going to happen on that date. And the other people that are trying to tell you exactly what to do without truly listening to what it is that's maybe unique or influencing your needs of your business. And then you have the people that are just kind of like absorbing every angle of this and trying to sift through all of it to determine what's the commonality of the purpose of the conversations. And then you have some people that are just frack out smart. And I'm so complimented by the fact that I get to share that time with all of you, because you're the ones that I refer to, because you all have to, here's my analogy for what Dean said. Tim, you're on the top line, the high-end view of all things. You see things in a grand perspective, and you see correlations that don't exist because you're seeing it from an altitude to realize that the river does run from the mountains to the ocean, where, I'm on the side of the river going, where's this water coming from?
The peyote helps though, right, Tim?
Well,
with
nearby. Okay, what the heck?
Only since they've legalized that in New Jersey. Yes.
There's a methodical breakdown that Dean does where he looks at constructs he still marvels, when I'm looking at a meta search issue and I'm trying to understand correlations, and he's, well, what did you look at this? And I'm like, thank you, light bulb. The humanization that Adele does, the ability to look at something that looks very functional and say, well, what is people really doing that for? How are they feeling that they're a part of that process? Robert just, I really do picture, Robert, that you just declutter the area behind your head so that there's not stacks of crap everywhere.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Because as I mentioned earlier before, where I can walk in going, hey, pretty day, isn't it? You're the kind of guy that has to walk in and says, pretty day, because I did analysis on 13,000 other days, and based on the ratios of values of the total temperature and humidity, this is a better day than 96% of the other ones. You have to come with data, and I'll give compliments to Stuart about looking at the multiplicities of a solution. You look at Ed in the contrast.
Well, don't force something into Ed. We can just let that go. Okay?
Ed is the contrarian, but here's I'll give credit to Ed where Ed is due. Ed believes what you're saying, but will create the contrarian position to simply validate how solid are you in your belief of it. How can you truly validate your opinion beyond the point of it being an opinion? Do you truly believe it? He reminds me of when I was in college. I went to college totally believing I understood how the world worked, which I think is kind of similar to anybody at that age. I truly believed I had figured this shit out. And then I got to college.
I miss being as smart as I was in
college.
Oh
my God, I was brilliant in college. But then when I had friends like I have friends now, which we sat around at the end of Saga, which was the cafeteria, drinking coffee, thinking we're all smart and stuff. And every one of my beliefs was challenged by the philosophy major, the business major, the accountant, and all these people that had a certain perspective on things that made you rethink, at least question, why did you believe that? Why did you think that? And I think our industry, in some strange way, is, for those who are seeing it in the true light, doing that. Are we really rethinking how we've done business to understand how we are, what we're pointing out to even today? How are we handling the uncertainty of the consistency of the uncertainties? We were kind of, not to be, we were kind of fat and happy before all of this. Business was business, and we were focusing on little granularities that probably don't mean anything now. But and now we're facing the fact that we have labor variations that we never had to face before. We have business cycles we're unable to really truly interpret because we don't have enough substantive information to really make the decisions the way we used to make those decisions. We have an environment that we have not been in. Most people, we talked about it beforehand, had never been through a downturn in our industry. We used to throw that stat around about how many people in our industry never went through a downturn and they were in management roles. well, check that box. they just went through one of the worst ones we've ever had. So anyway, I've been rattling about you all, but the idea of this decision process in the uncertainty range, I don't know if it's really bad. That's an easy decision. I don't know if it's really good. That's an easy decision. When do I do what I do based on what I know now is something that we have to remodel how we do. There's a lot of do's in that.
Adele, you're on mute.
Huh?
Adele,
you're mute.
We have no doubt it was brilliant, though.
It must have been amazing.
I
Yeah,
agree.
there's some noise happening here that I just didn't want you to hear. So yeah, I think we have to be willing to test things and hopefully do it in a small enough scale so we can quickly adapt to it. And as soon as we embrace the fact that no matter what we think now, it's definitely going to be wrong in some way, and we're definitely going to be learning and changing and doing things differently every day. The minute yay, it's wrong, now we know, let's try something else. And then you have to actually be willing to go back and try something that didn't work before because it works in this new environment that's 3 months later. I mean, we don't know about the third wave or if a fourth wave or anything else that's going to happen, but we do need to make money now. So testing, small tests and letting things grow, that really makes a lot of sense. And you know what? Another thing is, I am in this Facebook group with tens of thousands of other hospitality people. Wow, this is such an education for me because you get to hear the full spectrum of thought of staff members, how they think about things, how they really feel inside. They speak their mind. You can see some are way over here in the guests first, hospitality, love, I'm here to serve, to these guests are really making me crazy. I can't believe I have to deal with these same problems every day. And it's nobody's fault, but it's such a lesson, as this is what our people are enduring. These are the problems that they're having. This is the attitude that they bring to it. And how can I shift their attitude and maybe the way they're handling that problem so that it's no longer a problem, but it's an opportunity to improve their skill at shifting the guest experience completely over to being something unique. And that frustration that they have and that anger that they have towards the situation, towards the guests, towards the policies. It's policy. The minute you say it's policy, you have to think, well, we created that policy.
Right.
Right.
And they don't think that. They're just clutching it. And what is wrong with people for not understanding our policy?
You bring up a really good point about how we might have to change the internal politics, how we operate. This is a chance to purge the toxicity of, oh, your idea went to crap. Haha. That political, what I refer to as deniable culpability, close enough to take credit, far enough away from the blast if it goes wrong. The culture within that, when you, as you said, they'll point out to its policy or its so forth and so on. That's don't blame me, blame somebody else conversation. As soon as somebody starts quoting what they're not deciding and what's been decided for them, that's a deferral. That's I'm not that person. When going to
your end of the boat is sinking.
Yeah, and that has to. We have to kind of purge that. That's where I bring up the question. Sometimes, did we keep the right people on board? I keep thinking about that cartoon where it had half a boat floating with one guy trying to row it. It was like a big ship. And then the board members are all sitting on the poop deck as it's leaning back going, I don't understand, we're not going faster. We did all the cost savings we could. Figuring, you know what? You're kind of looking at this a little on the reverse. The people that make the decisions aren't the ones that facilitate the production. And how we do that, where any idea is a good idea and any bad idea is just a learned idea from it, rather than you lost some political collateral, I gained some because you made a bad decision or bad suggestion and it costs us this. That has to get purged out of our culture of things for us to be successful. That, hey, bad idea, what do we get out of it? Well, we learned that this isn't the right time for that campaign. Good, let's put it on the shelf and move on. Whatever it is, we have to look at.
Well, I seem to be quoting mentors of mine. By the way, get down with your bad self. Remember, bringing out a little like.
I was like, who's it?
A little-
Robert, do you bring music? No. Yeah.
1970s boogie. Another boss of mine, the great Ted Tang. When I first started working with him, I walked in and we were talking about this promotion that we'd done, where we had were 30% over our forecast, and I'm crowing about this, that we've done a great job and things like that. And his first question was, "Why did you miss?" I said, "What are you talking about? We didn't miss. We were 30% above forecast." And he said, "Right. You missed your forecast.
Yeah.
You missed it in a positive direction. But why did you miss? What did you? Because it always is learning, right? What did you learn from this that you're going to do differently? Was it that your forecast was too low?
Right.
Was it that you did why did you miss?" And it's okay to ask those questions on the good things and the bad things, because that's what we should be getting at. One of the problems that we have with analytics, you mentioned Robert's big on numbers. I try to use numbers a lot where I can, where they make sense to, and I think they tend to make sense to, don't get me wrong. But one of the problems that I think we run into is so many of our analytics are backwards looking.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be looking for what are those metrics that are predictive of where we will be, right? As opposed to, not that we don't want to look at our past numbers. We absolutely want to look at those past numbers. But are they telling us where we were, or are they telling us where we're going? And I'm always looking for those metrics that say, are we moving in a direction that is positive for us? And if not, how do we course correct, right? You want to start thinking about analytics that are predictive as well as just prescriptive.
Yep. I strangely enough that you bring that up, but this week I had a conversation with a client and I had a snarky person in the call that wasn't normally engaged with the call. And I'm sure you all have experienced this. When you're perceived as the vendor, there's always this tug internally of people proving why do you need this outside person when I can tell you the same thing mentality. Sure. And we were going through literally content and data, and I was talking about forensic reporting, which is my term of looking backwards. Well, that's how he died. Well, maybe we should have told him what was going on before he did,
Right.
And he's like, well, reporting's reporting. And I says, yes, but what's analytics? And of course that created a whole tizzy because he didn't win that point. And so we're going around with this. And it says, look, this is the difference between how I'm talking about things versus how you're talking about things. If you're driving your car and it's knocking like a son of a gun, okay? If you ignore it, okay, you can look back forensically and say, man, I maybe should have fixed the car from that knock because it was already telling me I was out of oil. Or you can look at it of, I got a knock in the car. What is that all about? Let me go check it out. That's the difference between your reporting and my analytics, because I'm determining that something's telling me something by what I'm looking at or hearing, whatever, but you're looking at it of, now I know what that knocking was about. I have a little bill, you have a big bill, whatever, So the idea of what you're saying is that changing how we look at those things. Remember when you used to run a hotel or be in hotels, being over in your bank was just as bad as being under. It still meant something went wrong.
Right.
Okay. If you went in and you still had an extra $5, that wasn't good. And gosh knows from a theft and issue point of view, you would actually check people's banks regularly. And if there was extra cash flowing, you're like, why do you have an extra 50 in your bank? Oh, well, whether it was $5 over one day and 10, then it's like you're asking questions like, why are you padding your bank? It just
sales guys do that all the time.
It's to your point, Tim. It's just as bad to be over and out, but to learn from.
It's not, and I want to be clear, it's not necessarily bad.
Okay,
It is an opportunity to say, what didn't go the way we expected? What do we learn from that? And do we need to do something different, or do we need to change our expectations? It's not, I'll be honest. It was one of the first times I ever worked with Ted. I'm confident there was a little bit of testing going on to say, is this guy just sandbagging?
Right, which is a term specifically to that.
You know, he was saying the nice version of it, but you know, but the reality was, if we were not doing what we said we were going to do, what caused that to be so, and should we be doing something different going forward? Yep. Whether it's forecasting differently, whether it's saying, oh wow, we found a lever to pull that, boy, when we pull that, something really good happens, and we should do that more often. Like, any of those are a possible answer. But it's not necessarily bad. It's a place where we look at the data and we say, what do we learn from this, and how do we do this more effectively going forward? Right?
You know, I've got a brother-in-law who, in a very literal sense, was a rocket scientist in the Air Force, and they had a saying in the military that if the minimum wasn't good enough, it shouldn't have been the minimum. And it kind of goes to that point of that they strive to hit the minimum. That is their goal, is to hit the minimum. Why? Because it was established that that was good enough. Now, that doesn't mean you don't go over the minimum, but like you're saying, if you did go over the minimum, you've got to be able to answer the question of why. What happened here?
And that kind of goes a little bit to what we're pointing out is, in this uncertainty time of, and not that any time is not uncertain, but in this particular time of where you're not seeing clarity with the information that's in front of you. Is it indicating something that you're looking for? Is it not indicating something you're looking for? Whatever. You have to give yourself those boundaries of what you are considering to be reasonable tolerance for the decision. Is there enough there for you to make the decision you're looking at the data for, or are you really looking for the total affirmation? Because that goes into a whole realm of, there's those that lead and those that follow those that did. You know, oftentimes in the C-level, there's 3 questions associated with most programs. How much does it cost? What are we going to get off of it? And the third question, which is to me the most irrelevant, but unfortunately one of the most pertinent to them, is who else is doing it? Because
I think that's an overly cynical point of view on that, Lauren. In my point of view,
no. I'm not going to take that away. It is cynical.
They're going to ask questions like, what are the risks? Have we thought through the problem? You know, if you work with good leaders, they're going to ask good questions about, have we thought this through correctly?
And we all know that the world is not full of all the good leaders. There are people in that room
that we should model ourselves after the ones who do it well, right? We should model ourselves.
We can't hear you.
Robert, you're on duty.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
I was just emulating Adele. What can I say? So the shortcut for de-risking is, who has been doing this successfully for a really long time repetitively, which is not exactly moving forward, right? So I'm very proud that all of you guys read my newsletter this morning, because
in detail,
because it came out 5 minutes after the show started.
I've got it open right now, Robert. When you see me looking over here, I'm reading the newsletter.
But $300 a day for Kia Rio. Holy crap.
Yeah. But the preamble, not one of the news items, was about Philip Wolff, and I found like not his last interviews, right? Because he interviewed a bunch of people in March for ITB, then sadly passed away literally like 6 days later, right? Just very, a horrible situation with aggressive leukemia, unfortunately, just completely unknown, unpredicted how. But what he said, he was interviewed by Roland Conradi, who's kind of the head of the ITB education sessions, has been for decades probably. But he basically said the thing was planning for what will come, not what was. And it's about a 30-minute conversation. I included a link and I threw it in the show notes here to the video. But the 3 key pieces of advice were, one was make things better, right? Because when you're in this crisis, everybody's just trying to survive, and they're all looking back. How do we get back to normal? Let's go back. He's like, that's not going to work, sort of thing. You've got to look at, just like we were saying, what's happening right now. It's like the thing with the car. The car is knocking. How do we make this better? And that's the direction you want to go. But he made some really good assessments that basically what's going to happen out of this pandemic is you're going to see a new generation of leadership come out of it. Like the people who really got it right and leapt forward and really looked forward. Those guys are going to be the leaders in, whatever, a number of years, not the ones who are like, hey, we got back to whatever. But the two other ones that I thought were interesting was specifically for the hospitality industry. So the big challenge is going to be, how do you make things fun, right? You've got to make it, you've got to make it fun. And then the third one was, if you're not involved in digital transformation, you're out. Just
Right.
toss in the towel on those things. But this is very good, valuable thing, kind of classic Philip stuff. So,
That's great stuff.
but ties in straight to, I mean, you can't deny any of those, and it ties in exactly what we were saying.
It reminds me of something someone said to me yesterday when talking about people who were mad about something, that someone said MAD stands for make a difference. You're mad about something, how are you going to make a difference?
Yeah.
That's great.
And I totally, completely, 100% believe you about the new management style, because I think this is a purge. I feel that there was a purge in our industry for those that weren't adaptive to digital presence. Those people that were codgy to say, oh, I don't need about this internet thing. I run a hotel. Okay, they're not around anymore. And it's not because they were bad managers of hotels. It wasn't because they were bad people. It was just they weren't willing to absorb that into what they needed to add to the repertoire of what they did. Those were still the guys that had their office behind the secretary, and that was the word that was used. Okay, that you made an appointment to go see because that's what you did, and it was like going to the top of the mountain with a basket of fruit to throw in the volcano. Those days are gone. I mean, I remember when I was GM of one hotel, and the office structure was built like that. Like when I was GM of it, I'm like, why is my office way the BF back at the end of that hallway? And there's two assistant stations that people, when they walk into the back office, it was an old build house, old build hotel. It was built, beautiful back of the house, though. I mean, totally love the back of the house with the huge halls and you can get anywhere in the hotel without being seen by a guest stuff. Love those hotel footprints. But the corporate, the offices were built in the old days where the GM was the top of the mountain in the back corner thing. And you had
High castle.
Yeah. If you were going down into the hallway, something was going on.
I worked for a gentleman. This was in the 90s, early 90s, whose assistant would go to the ATM for him. Always, he couldn't manage to do the ATM himself, but he had to get a computer. We had to buy a computer for his office and everything like that. And okay, I am an evil, bad person. I admit it. But I unplugged the keyboard after about a week, and we never got a complaint.
He didn't know.
And let me tell you, early 90s, there was no voice or gesture interfaces at that point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. I did when I picked up the hotel. I mean, and there's like, well, this is your GM's car, because we had a rental office in the lobby as well. And I'm like, say what? And they're like, yeah, the GM gets a rental car to your business car. I'm like, okay, cool, but why? My first thought was, how much is this costing us? I mean, and of course, it reduced the rent of the footprint that they had in the lobby and stuff. But the point is that everything goes through transitions. Those things, we went through these different things where, that's before people even had to worry about websites in their hotel. Like, what's the website? And the idea now from how we emerge is that I wouldn't say adaptive, because that's probably an overused word. It's making it fun, as you pointed out, Robert, and making it where people are truly engaged with what they're doing. They believe they're part of the success of what's going on, and that they find vested that they're being compensated for their investment in what they're doing as well. And I don't think that is a common thought right now. Going back to what you pointed out, Tim, pessimistically, we talk about, corporate decision making being based on who else is doing it, is a pessimistic perspective. I agree with you. Unfortunately, I do a head smack when I'm in the middle of a conversation with those people, and that's a question that comes up. It's like, okay, so you want to always be a follower. I've actually gotten slightly indignant about it. I'll be
Sure,
honest with you.
sure.
To me, I don't. I'd
Sure.
much rather walk out of a room of people that I don't want to work with than to try to sit in a room just to cash a check because well,
Yeah.
well, they're going to do business with me if I just get the butt.
By the
But
way, I do want to say, if your only response, I used to work with an executive years ago who that was the only question he ever asked in any meeting I was ever in with the guy. So
Yeah.
and everybody knew he was. The expression we used to use, I think in Texas they call it all hat no cattle. The expression we used was a 44 long. Right, because it was just a suit, that was.
Yeah.
He had the right height, he had the cool glasses, he had a good haircut. He was a 44 long, right? But that's what he brought to the table. It's the question of where is the intent behind that question, right? Is it that's the only thing you know how to ask, or is it you're thinking about, okay, are we leading the way? Are we following? Are there things we can learn from what other people have done that we can do better, et cetera?
Right.
And
Right.
that to me is a perfectly fine question. I agree with you completely that if somebody's just asking it because they're that's all they can think of.
That's all they can contribute. They're sitting in the room and that's all they can.
That is obviously a problem.
And I think actually this weekend's a very interesting case study because it's going to be Amazon is theoretically up for a union vote in Alabama.
Oh yeah,
right?
Alabama. Yeah.
And it's very interesting because Amazon, I think fairly empirically, is a very progressive company in a lot of their practices, right? They go out there.
In many of them.
In many
Not
of
all of
them.
them.
No, in many of them, because $15 wage, right?
Sure,
Or
sure.
it's in Mississippi or Alabama. Mississippi, I guess. I'm not sure.
It's Alabama's.
It is Alabama. Okay, that's right. So with that, I think they looked at it and went, hey, minimum wage is $7.25. We are paying $15 and with great health benefits, right? This is a no-brainer. The main thing that basically the employees are complaining about is basically understanding the practices, right? Because they're saying, hey, there's this time off task stuff that we don't really know. It's clearly, because people can be, and all that stuff are basically Amazon policies, I believe, to give them flexibility, right? So they can get the marginal employees and go, you know what, this person's not doing so well, let's move them out. And you don't have to have, your X 0.2 of a second under or 2/10 over. You can kind of work through these things, right? Which is good for flexibility, but that's going to be a very interesting outcome because obviously, and I'm not the world's most pro-union person at all, but you look at Amazon's situation, you go, strikes are not good for Prime members. Right, that's a bad scenario for their brand promise, right? So how do they make that happen? And I think not just being they're looking at it as a structural what if there's something where there's a strike and it is frivolous and it's going to fail and things like, but all of a sudden you have a region which winds up, and how you can't just pop down another 1 million square foot fulfillment center with scab workers in there in 24 hours to get that thing up and running, right? So this is going to be a very, very interesting thing, which possibly could have been avoided by just better transparency by Amazon, where they have all the data, they have all of this, but they haven't chosen to really say, here's exactly the practices of how we do these certain things, the more soft, time off task break type thing, because they don't want to say, okay, you get a 30-minute break, but you know what? If you're 7 minutes late coming back, you don't get a black mark. Because they know all of a sudden a lot of people will now take 36.5-minute breaks and they've now lost X percentage of profitability and they need X more, and that's X fewer packages and whatever, right? They've run the math. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting.
But this is where it's fascinating for hotels. Sorry, Adele, please go ahead.
Very quick. As soon as you introduce the us against them,
oh yeah,
you've lost, and it's forever going to be that way.
Right.
Yep. Where I was going to say is where this is bad for hotels, where this is challenging for hotels, and we've been talking about this. There was a phenomenal jobs report today. The jobs report was amazing, 900,000 jobs, which let's be fair, we're digging out of a huge hole. We have to have a
Right.
jobs report like today's every month for the next 10 months to get back to
Right.
where we were in
Yeah.
March of 2020. So, but there is now a record number of job openings among small businesses. Small businesses are having to raise wages and things like that to attract people back to work and the like. So this is something that I think, we're going to get back real quick. Everybody's like, I want to go back to the way we were. Well, remember where we were in January of 2020? We were all complaining about we can't get labor.
Right.
Right? Labor costs are going through the roof.
Yep.
And Amazon hired, 600,000 people
Oh, yeah.
during the pandemic at $15 an hour with benefits.
Yep.
And great benefits.
And
really
pretty darn good benefits. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, they have things that are profit share. Yeah, you can buy shares, right, on a regular recurring basis. They've got retirement plan and all sorts of, they've got kind of everything.
Okay, so now you need a front desk clerk or a night auditor, or
Yeah.
a housekeeper, right? This is the environment you're competing with, and that's going to be a different challenge, especially while you're trying to recover. I mean, since we were talking a lot about data, one piece of forward-looking data I always look at is the number of people who pass through TSA on a daily basis. I watch that about every week. I look at the numbers. And we've had 2 solid weeks where we've been over 2020 numbers.
Yep.
Yay.
Yeah.
For the first time this year, right? It took until the 15th of March was where we passed the 15th of March 2020, right? So yay. We are still, let's see, we had 1.6 million yesterday versus 2.4 million 2 years ago, right? Going through TSA. So we're still about 2/3 of the way, a third of the way below where we were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
And the spring break bump is going to start coming down.
Correct.
That's going to be
Correct.
Easter being this weekend, yes.
So the point that I'm making here is that, we are going to have both a challenging labor environment and a challenging economic environment, because things are getting great compared to where they were in 2020. They're not getting great to where they were. They will. I'm super confident. I'm becoming very confident that this summer is going to be really good in a way that we haven't seen, which is a plus, but not if you can't get the labor to fill, to actually serve the needs of the guests. And so you have to be thinking about, again, how do we do this most effectively? To bring this full circle and touch on one very specific point that Philip Wolf mentioned in this interview. How do we not be surprised by the things that always happen? Adele, you were talking about having flexibility and the like. That is a place where technology can help you. Do you have the right tech platform that lets you get by with less labor, or lets the labor be more effective, so that you can pay more, so that you can attract people who are better at what they do? Philip mentioned digital transformation. I have I don't want to hammer on this too much. It just happens to be the thing that I focus on a lot in my work, so I think about this a ton. I have a very specific definition of digital transformation, and digital transformation is not about technology. If you think digital transformation is about technology, you're thinking about it the wrong way from my perspective, right? Uber does not have a digital transformation problem. Airbnb does not have a digital transformation problem. Google does not have a digital transformation problem.
Yeah.
They have always existed in a world where the internet and where digital was the norm, right? Digital transformation is business transformation, because our customers now have different expectations because of the fact that digital exists, right? So are you using technology and also structuring your business such to say, how do we take advantage of these facts and serve the needs of our customers and of our guests based on what their expectations are that they're getting met every day by an Uber, by an Airbnb, by an Amazon, by a Google. Right. So it's really thinking about, this is your opportunity to say, if I was starting a brand new hotel today from scratch, would I do what I did 20 years ago? And if your answer is yes, you're really not thinking about it the right way. You really need to be thinking about, what does my hotel need to be for the next 5 to 10 years, as if I were starting from scratch. We just unfortunately had a chance to hit the reset button, and that sucks. But the upside is we just had a chance to hit the reset button.
Yes,
Yeah.
100% so agree with you. And I just want to say before I go, a couple of things. Every day is transformation day if you're embracing the data. And guess what? Guest feedback is data. Employee feedback is data. And we should be transforming every day. There isn't one day where you shouldn't be going, oh, that's what the guests think. That's what our employees said to me. What can I make better? And another thing is about the whole challenge with the labor. Remember that before COVID, there was wage inequity, income inequity, and it was getting worse, with the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And I could be wrong, but I wonder what would happen if we just raised our prices, if everybody just raised our prices by a few dollars in order to make our lowest paid workers get a living wage. Wouldn't they become travelers that could then enjoy, like the Model T? Let my workers be able to afford to buy a car themselves. And that just makes the world a better place for everyone. I could be wrong, but that's what I believe. And it just seems like the right thing to do. And people will pay that extra few dollars because people love to travel.
But they
Well,
might not.
and-
They might not need to pay the extra dollars, right? Because the question is, can you make your operation more efficient to the point
love
where you can use that labor more effectively, right? Because
And
you
I
wind up
can
with
tell
all
you-
these situations where you've got people they're inefficiently staffed, right? You have troubles, predicting occupancies, flow. As Dean was saying with the, I think earlier, you look at the weather or whatever, right? And doing a forecast. Yes, all those things are really important, but again, how many groups are going out on their daily reports and making sure that they've got the temperature recorded for last year versus how many covers versus whatever? Now, 1983, yes, I was doing that as a standard for Four Seasons, right? We established that on everything, minute details, because then 2 years later, you didn't just look at last year and last day. You go, wait a second, what's the weather? It's going to be 70 degrees, such and such. We need to goose this up for next week or whatever, because you could look at a 10-day for, and sometimes you're right. Sometimes freak thunderstorm. But those were pieces of information that made you be more efficient, and you didn't get surprised by summer rolling around every year.
And there was that year with the big flood you had to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
Number
What was that,
one
Dean?
efficiency, empower your staff with the decision-making tools and the skills and the freedom from fear that they can make a decision on the spot. So it doesn't have to go to the manager, take up their time, go to the general manager, take up their time. The general manager thinks they don't have time to train the front desk to make decisions on their own. So she ends up making doing things herself that she never should have to bother with.
Wait. Are you telling me mushroom management, keeping your employees in the dark and then periodically throwing shit on them is a bad policy? That is not the way you manage staff.
I'd also add on top of that,
Who
I
knew?
gotta go.
Adele,
Thank you
bye.
so much.
Adele, where can people find you, Adele?
At adelegutman.com and at the Hospitality Reputation Marketing Podcast. Get great reviews with my co-host producer, Lauren Gray.
Yeah,
Wow.
Fabulous.
Now on Audible, my favorite
I'm on
app.
Audible.
Oh, man.
Wow,
There we
very
go.
cool.
Thanks, Adele, as always.
Bye, Adele.
I'd add also one other sentiment to that, and this was something that somebody told me once, is to don't ask the person that's rowing the boat what color you want to paint the boat and think that you're making them be a participant in the conversation. They don't care. Talk to them about making cushions on the seats. Now they're listening. Have them. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that to your point about resets. One of the things that we do have a doorway out of hell here, and that is that there have been, because of the duration. One thing, it was just a few months. Like, okay, pause the world, a couple of months, and then we go back. Okay, we paused it and then kept pausing, and what we've ended up finding out is people have had the chance to get past the I'm just going to drink my days away, be better, just okay, to the oh crap, I got to get healthy thing. Where
Wait, we're supposed to stop that now?
no,
No.
for some of us it's an ongoing thing. Don't worry.
Okay. Woo.
but the idea is that it got long enough that we went through the 5 stages of grief, so to speak. Okay, and from that we now have a tool in a positive way. I'm not saying this is a leverage point, though. Is that if we can identify a relationship with whom we're asking to join what we're doing in a meaningful way, to what a little bit of what Adele said, what you said, where it said, look, I'm not just filling a warm seat in a butt, where I'm not managing on the sense of I don't want to do it, so I'm going to hire a warm body to do it. I'm hiring a team member. I'm hiring somebody. I want to be a part of what we're doing to produce success for all of us, that you feel good about what you've done to contribute to it, whether it's cleaning a room, checking in a gas, fixing a light bulb, serving food, whatever it is. We feel we did this together. To Dell's point, empowering decision-making capabilities, but making it feel that the GM isn't in what I was talking about in the room in the back corner, but an active participant in your daily success.
Right.
That there is no. All of us have, as I always used to say, all of us have different roles in the same play. It doesn't mean that the play could have succeeded with just one of us performing. It means that we all have to play the role. If I'm playing a tree in the background, I have to be a good tree. Just as much as I have to be the lead actor. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, the only thing I was going to say is, and I agree. First of all, I agree with what you said. I agree with Robert said. I agree with what Dean said. I agree with what Adele said completely and utterly. I would add a nuance to this. This is not a disagreement. It is. There's a great book. It's an old book. It's been around for a long time. God, the 80s, I think. Harvard Business Review book about the value discipline of market leaders. And it's a book I'm a big fan of. And they talk about the fact that fundamentally, and I'm taking a 300-page, very well researched, very well approved in the real world book, and I'm summarizing this in 100 words or less. So there's nuance here that I'm leaving out. But basically, you can boil down every successful company in the world to one of 3 strategies, right? Those strategies are: you have product excellence. You are product leadership. You are the best product. Think Apple, think BMW, think, things like that, where they strive on the most outstanding product. You can have operational efficiency. Think Amazon, think UPS, think FedEx, right? That often exhibits itself as the low-cost leader.
Yeah.
And you can have customer intimacy. Think Nordstrom's, think Ritz-Carlton, think the leading hotels in the world, right? Where you really understand the needs of the customer and you take very good care of them. Now, I want to be really clear. In the book, they talk about this. By the way, I do this with my clients all the time. But in the book, they talk about the fact that you have to do 2 of them well. You don't get to ignore any of them. You can't have crap products. You can't be inefficient and say, well, we're going to get by because we just understand our customers so well and be customer intimacy and you win. That's not what's true. You have to minor in 2 of them, but you have to major in 1, right? Yeah. And I think where we get in trouble sometimes in hospitality is, we're trying to major in multiple. We're going to be the best hotel in our market. We're going to be the most customer intimate. We're going to take care of every guest that we want. And we're going to be the most operationally efficient.
Right.
That actually doesn't work. That's how you fall down. And so what you have to do when you're empowering your customers, your employees, what you have to do when you're thinking about where you're trying to go is say, what do we major in? What is the message we want our staff to know? And if we're going to be super efficient, we're going to be good to the guest, we're going to take care of them, we're going to make sure the product is of a certain standard, but we're really focused on efficiency. Let them know that that's the primary concern. Now you're going to get a different caliber of guest. You're going to have some things that aren't to the standards of other things. I actually don't think operationally efficient tends to be the best way to win in most cases. But if you're an economy roadside motel, it might be exactly what you need to do to be a successful product for the long run, right? So it's being very clear, not just on all of the things you said, but also being very clear on where are we trying to get to, and what is the path we've chosen for how we get there? Which role are we trying to play in the marketplace of, is it pure efficiency? Is it pure, customer intimacy? Or is it we're going to have the best damn product anybody's ever experienced?
Right.
Because if you try to do all three, you're probably not going to succeed.
Well, and and one of the examples, because that is a great book, and I think it was from the 90s, actually, more recent than that.
It might be the 90s. It's still, I mean, the 90s is still if it came out in the middle of the decade, it is still a 25-year-old book.
That's a
It is
very
also,
good point.
it is still a relevant book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But you look at like Southwest Airlines, right? And their key was operational efficiency, because they decided we're going to use one type of equipment. And how much does that save us on maintenance and training, mechanics and training flight crews and things like that? Where my wife worked for Northwest, they had like 14 different types of planes. They had 747s, they had DC-8s, DC-10s, 727s.
But they did not have the best product. Southwest did not have the best.
Oh, absolutely not. They
had operational efficiency and decent customer intimacy.
Oh yeah. And that's what they focused on. And they've figured out, they clearly figured out, hey, the boarding situation, we can do this more efficiently if we do it this way instead of these assigned seats.
And
we can do such and such.
As opposed to O'Hare, and we'll fly into,
Yep, absolutely. And so, they made those compromises very, very focused, but the focus was on what's the customer trying to do? And part of that was, hey, they're trying to save money and do that. And well, guess what? You aren't going to have, these wide-bodied planes flying to, wherever, Jakarta, nonstop, with whatever, and first-class service, whatever. That's not what we do. We focus on this, and we're going to do it really well. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of hoteliers, and especially coming out of this, because all of a sudden it's like we will take any form of business at any point and cut our rates and do all sorts of that, which all of a sudden creates more chaos and weird,
way more problems.
We've cut out a whole bunch of services that we aren't going to come back, right? And things. There's going to be a lot of friction and chaos and misunderstanding coming out of this, right?
Robert, you bring up some excellent points. I want to add one to what you just said, and I want to point out some things you just made me think about. One is, I would add to what you just said, Tim and Robert, is consistency. If anything we've learned being sensitive to our current world of environments is we are up and down like a freaking yo-yo about who's in charge dictates what gets happening. One minute we're this country, and the next minute we're this country is a great example. We have this, whoever's in charge, that's what happens. And a lot of people are looking for what they want to be associated with and connected to. But more importantly, I think right now people are wanting consistency of the relationship. If you're telling me we're an efficient hotel, give me my KPIs, give me my goals, and I now know what you expect of me.
Correct.
I know what I need to focus on, and I don't have to be where you walk in the next thing and go, you know what? We don't have enough flowers around here. And now it says, well, okay, flowers. How many flowers is the right flowers? And how many, and then the next day you're walking and go, we got to make 3 flavors of coffee. You have to be consistent about what you're saying. You're
to which of those you are, right?
Yes, right. To pick your lane, Pick your lane,
Pick your lane, and then do that every day. I agree completely.
Right. You just be consistent about it. The other thing that you pointed out, Robert, was something that really echoes to my mind a decision that has to be talking about in the hallowed halls of branding right now. What are we? I mean, I know, Tim, that you were very clear that Marriott and brands and so forth have a perspective of what they are. They're a franchisor. This is our purpose. This is what we do. I'm talking about from a brand flavor perspective as to, I think we witnessed up to the point of COVID, oh, that's where business is. Let's make a brand for that. And then we all know that there's more to it than that. But I'm just saying, those people are traveling that way. Let's make a brand for that represents them. And I think probably one of the benchmark shows we ever had was the day, Robert, you read off the mission statements of brands, and we couldn't pick one out of the hat if we freaking,
that's still a great parlor. Dean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that parlor game. It is my favorite. You go to the hotel websites and you look at their brand list, right? And you take out the little blurbs, right? Just the little
elevator.
It's the elevator, but just the little, here's what we are, the brand promise statement, right? And you take those out and you remove them from the brand name. And you neutralize anything that might say, say the double tree cookie or something like
Yeah, right.
you
Right,
filter a little bit out, right? People can't do it.
Can't
It's,
for the
I mean,
life
we
of
are
day.
talking a bit worse
Robert,
than,
Robert, the best one I ever heard about this. First of all, Lauren, you and I agree on this completely. That was actually the point I was making last week as well. It was just a question of
We're going back
to
down that.
whose benefit. The benefit was the franchisee, not necessarily the guest, right?
Right.
But my favorite story about this ever was Barry Sternlicht talking about when they did this at Starwood, when they came out with things like the Heavenly Bed. They did a study. Wait for this. This is one of my favorite stories of all time. I wish I had done it. I just heard Barry Sternlicht talk about it, right? And he said they did a study where they showed people pictures of the rooms and asked them which flag was flying based on the room. And the odds were worse than random chance. But wait. No, wait for it.
There's more.
They conducted the study not with guests, but with employees of Starwood.
right.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
And he said that's when we knew we had a huge problem.
Right. Okay, so Dean,
Because there was nothing that differentiated these brands at the time from one another at all, which is why Starwood at the time, and let's be fair, Sheraton at the time was in such bad shape.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing that separated any of those brands from one another.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can we play this game just a little? Because it is such a fun game.
We have
right?
14 minutes left before
That's
I have
okay.
to drop, but
Okay,
yeah,
that's
we
fine.
play for a minute. Yeah.
Okay. These are just Marriott brands. We're going to limit it down. Okay.
Okay. So that's 31 flavors of
Exactly.
ice cream stores have more flavor, less flavors.
And no cheating by going to their website.
Is that combined Marriott Starwood? We're talking about the marriage.
The current Marriott brands. Do not look at this page, but the Marriott brand page, which lists them all. Enriching experiences thoughtfully crafted by associates who truly love what they do. Of course, that's JW Marriott.
Well, I was just ready to say that.
I was just thinking I need the list in front of me so I could actually go from the list. But, okay.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. Let's see. Provides sophisticated spaces and experience that keep the mind balanced, sharp, and inspired.
Courtyard.
No, I think it's Tribute.
Full service Marriott hotels.
Service Marriott.
Okay. Well, this one has a little. Well, this one you might be able to get. I don't know. At the heart of hundreds of communities around the globe, we invite you to gather and share experiences anywhere you go.
Residence Inn.
That sounds right.
No.
Could be
I know where to say
Courtyard also.
because I got burned on that last time.
That's Sheraton, of course.
Oh, that's the Sheraton one. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, here's one. This one's a great one. When you focus on the details that truly matter, you can make them perfect.
Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah. Luxury collection? No, that's Delta, folks.
Oh, really?
Oh,
had to throw that one in there.
It's innate.
I forgot.
Okay.
I with no disrespect to Delta, which I actually like Delta hotels a lot. I forgot that was part of Marriott.
Right? Yeah. I wouldn't have even thought of that.
Last one at blank, the brand name. We believe that every trip can be a tale. Every turn contains a twist. And we are here to show you how to make the most of every step along the way.
So it's a
Throw
story.
back in.
The what?
I'm thinking one of them that's very story based. It's about the story, the experience.
Sounds kind of like Autograph, right, or something like that. Something
Could be design hotels. Could be
design. No, guys, it's Renaissance. When you think of the Schaumburg Renaissance, I think that is exactly where you're headed, folks.
Once again,
It's
a sad tale.
It's pathetic. Well,
Okay,
first,
so
none of these say anything about anything anyway, right? They have
Let me turn that around. Let me turn that around on you. So let's take a brand new brand. We talked about the opportunity to set the stage and define yourself and the
Right.
digital transformation and all those different things. So let's take something that recently happened that has an opportunity to define all those things we just talked about. What is a kayak hotel?
Oh, kayak hotel is Steve Hafner's ego trip.
No, what? But what
Yeah,
is
pretty
the
much, yeah.
hotel? What is the
Well,
problem?
no,
There's
I'm gonna,
not.
it's not. They haven't defined it yet.
They haven't
Yeah.
defined it, and they won't, and it won't succeed.
Yeah, but
You
but
know-
neither will kayak, so it's all okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I think-
no, kayak succeeds for a very specific purpose. Actually, that
Today.
collects a hell of a lot of data to inform booking and Priceline and all of that stuff. And I think they will
It's a
use it. Yeah, no, they'll
It's a
use
feature
it.
they can turn on Booking.com tomorrow,
Yeah,
and they have at times. And kayak is not a business. Kayak is a feature.
right.
So
No,
just as a point of interest, not to only circle back to Meta, sorry about that, but I looked the hotel up on Google, and in Google, it's owning their Meta positions, doing a great job on that as a hotel link. But there's no, usually you can see a kayak point of sale on most Meta listings. They don't have one on their own hotel. Why do you suppose that is?
oops.
But if anything, I would just say is an impression of what kayak, other than the obvious ego trip, is that you would think as a consumer that they are going to be very price sensitive, that they're always going to be at some price comparison that is equitable to the market that they're sitting in. And I'm only making an impression assumption. I have never seen anything that would lend itself to that. They could be priced out of the market for all I know. But given what you think kayak is providing as a service value, there might be some relationship to their hotel concept being connected like that. Is my
To me,
personal
they should
impression.
be very tech savvy, right? That's kind of what the image that I would have is they're a very technology based hotel.
Mm.
So here's the thing, right? And I have passionate feelings about this. I have no response to the kayak thing because I don't.
By the way, you have
know.
some very physical tales, Tim, when you have passionate experiences. I'm just letting you know.
No, I know. Well, that's why I don't play poker.
Yeah.
Why I don't play poker. What we're talking about here, and this is something I get really impassioned about, is this idea of differentiation. And I have a very explicit definition of differentiation. Differentiation is not what makes you different. Differentiation is a difference that a customer will pay
Paid
for.
Yeah.
If they're not willing to pay you more for it, it's a nice thing, but it's not a true differentiation, right? Kayak today, since we're beating them up at the moment, right? Kayak's problem at the moment is that there is nothing that differentiates them as a meta search from any other meta search. And in fact,
There is one thing. We'll come back to that.
not really though. Not really.
I'll come back to it.
Okay. Why would I go to Kayak as opposed to just being on Google, for instance? Right? What is the benefit to me as the consumer? What actually differentiates it? And specifically, why would I choose Kayak? Now, in this case, I'm paying with my time as opposed to dollars. But there's not a real reason that I would choose to go there, right? There's challenges that other folks have in that regard. One of the reasons I tend to work with independent hotels, and I've worked with some chains, and I've worked with some good properties in chains and some good management companies in chains, and they exist, they do. But one of the challenges that chains have generally is how do you differentiate? Marriott has 31 brands because they need to be able to sell 31 different flags in the same market without getting into area of protection problems, right? I mean, I'm way oversimplifying it. That's not 100% fair because there are differences between some of the brands for sure. But that's certainly part of the reality of what they do because they're in the business of adding room count, right? When you talk about an independent hotel, you can be truly differentiated. Now, you also take on various risks because what you don't have is you don't have Bonvoy. You don't have, right? Like you don't have benefits of a rewards program necessarily. You don't have necessarily the distribution, the way to lower distribution costs that you might have if you're a Marriott property. You don't have X, you don't have Y, you don't have Z, you don't have I don't know what Marriott's marketing budget is for this year, but it's probably more than your local independent is going to have. We all know that every dollar that Marriott spends isn't directly benefiting every hotel in their chain. We also all know that every hotel in their chain is getting some benefit from that marketing budget without them spending a dollar. So those are the trade-offs that you make, right?
Right.
But what we're talking about here is differentiation and the lack thereof that they struggle with some of these chains. If there was greater differentiation among the chains, then the slogan would be a piece of cake. You know, I thought that there was when I started working for Wyndham, Super 8 was our biggest brand. I think it is still their biggest brand today in terms of number of properties in the brand. And they had a terrible tagline. From a pure marketing perspective, it was not a great tagline, right? But it was correct. It was accurate, clean and friendly, right? It was very clear what you were going to get when you went there. And you might be willing to pay $1 more. You know, don't forget, we're talking about properties that were selling at the time for maybe $59 or $69 a night. You might be willing to spend 61 instead of 59 or 71 instead of 69, right? Because you knew what you were going to get. It was clean. It was friendly. Nobody ever went to a Super 8 with no disrespect. Super 8 was my favorite brand while I worked there. I still love Super 8. I think it's a great brand. But most people don't go to a Super 8 to stay at the Super 8. You're going to a Super 8 because you're going somewhere else, and there happen to be Super 8s there or happen to be Super 8s on the way to there.
Yeah.
And there's a perfect need in the marketplace for a product like that. You can do it well and you can differentiate. And they differentiated at the time by saying, look, we're going to be clean, we're going to be friendly. That's we're Southwest Airlines at best. And that's what you're going to get. So to me, that's the problem we have, is that there's not enough differentiation.
But the thing with kayak is, and the reason I'm saying it's more like a Hafner ego thing, and I've worked with Steve for a number of years, right? And I'll tell him he has an ego. It doesn't matter, and he knows he has an ego, right?
Dude, just watch him on stage for 5 minutes.
But that property was previously the Eurostar's Vintro Hotel. And go into Google and go look at it and stuff. And yes, they've partnered with Lifehouse and they're doing all this stuff. And isn't this cool? Take a look at the rooms. It's a 50-room boutique hotel in South Beach, right? So you look at the previous ones, the room design was very light and airy and looked nice. It was very modern and looked very good. Now, could you do certain things? Yes, you could certainly make it better. But you look at it now, dark gray walls and very, very non-Miami Beach, right? I mean, it's just not. I don't know. I don't think these guys know, what they are, what they're doing. They aren't. I don't know. I don't see it. I know they're associated with Lifehouse, and maybe that'll help them. But yeah, I don't see the branding as providing that, again, that differentiation that somebody's willing to pay for. I mean, how much more are you willing to pay for to stay in a kayak hotel than a name any brand, right? I mean,
you don't really care at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's about the brand. I think it's about being a guinea pig. It's a test subject for kayak.
I agree. I completely agree with that.
Well, and Open Table, because Hafner also runs Open Table now, right?
Yeah.
Because kayak is so important to that group that they don't. It's kind of like Twitter with Dorsey, right? They don't have a full-time CEO. So not necessarily the best thing for the brand not to have a full-time CEO. Right.
So here's where kayak does have some opportunity in the market. We were talking earlier about that. They're not a huge meta search channel. They're never going to take on Google by any means. But where there is a chink in Google's armor when it comes to meta search that a lot of people don't talk about, and that is when it comes to alternate accommodations, your vacation rentals, your RV resorts, and those kind of things, which, by the way, are really popular right now, because Google has a chink in the armor in the fact that your Google meta search listings are all tied to your Google My Business page. Well, when you talk about a vacation rental is a unit within a building in many cases. The building has a Google My Business page, the unit does not. And as a result, Google has a really hard time. Now, there are vacation listings in Google, don't misunderstand, but it's not something that's tied into Meta. It's just a single point of sale. Kayak, on the other hand, and by the way, remember a couple of years ago, just before COVID, they bought Hotels Combined. And Hotels Combined brings with it a CRS platform called Revado. And what makes that really interesting now is when you start looking at, so they've got this hotel, which by the way has their own proprietary booking engine on it. So they've got a hotel-based IBE on there. They've got a CRS now, and they've got a whole bunch of alternate accommodations. You can find a bed and breakfast in New Orleans over Mardi Gras on Kayak. You can actually find RV resorts on Kayak, things that Google can't do right now. Kayak is actually doing kind of well.
I completely agreed. Completely agreed. Dean, this is something, and first of all, you're absolutely correct. So let me start there. This is something I've spent the last 20 some odd years of my career focused on. And there, there's this truism in digital that there are only two ways to win. You either have to be the place where people can go to get everything, or you have to be differentiated. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about differentiation is for most of the people I'm going to work with most of the time, they're not going to be the place you're going to be everything. Right? You're not. So you have to be differentiated. And I mean, that's true if you're Expedia, by the way. Right? Because by definition, you're not going to go to Expedia for everything. You're going to go to Google for everything. You're going to go to Expedia for travel. You're going to go to booking.com for travel, right? But by definition, you then need to be very well differentiated. So could Kayak be the meta search of alternative accommodations and win that? They could. Is that what they're leaning into hard today? It's not. It's right. And so
they're up against Vrbo with Expedia, who is going on it, and Airbnb, which has fairly good branding and differentiation, I would argue.
Correct. Right. And that's the challenge that Kayak specifically has. And it's the challenge that a lot of people have when there is an Airbnb, when there is a Vrbo, right? Being the third version of, well, you can go there to get alternatives. That's a tough place to win. You have to be the place, right? And that's really their biggest challenge. And it's the biggest challenge that anybody who's a meta search engine that isn't distinctly differentiated from the place you go to get everything has a tough road to hoe. Doesn't mean they can't win it. It means they really have to own it. And there could be, there could absolutely be the meta search of RV parks. There could be the meta search of houseboats. There could be, right? Because those would be clearly differentiated. Their growth is only going to be so large, but that's okay. You own 100% of a real small pond. You can still do plenty of fishing, right? Well, so it's just that's the reality that we have to think about anytime you talk about a digital product specifically is how do you make sure you are, if you're not the place that people go for every single thing, you have to be really clearly differentiated. And today, Kayak is not.
And I would say there's going to be a very interesting, maybe you call it a reckoning. I don't know. But in the past, everything's been, a hotel product because it was based on an airline product. An airline product is a class of service like coach class and a fare basis code, right? Like a 21-day advance purchase. That's what makes an air product. A hotel product is a room category and a rate plan. It works exactly the same way because when they started, that's exactly the platform they were built on, right? They just pounded the square peg into the round hole, right? So that's fine. The interesting thing that's happening now, because I'm leading this hospitality ID initiative. For a while, people are like, oh, I don't know if we need it. We've got this. We've got a reward program. People come to us. All of a sudden, I've noticed this shift, and it started on the digital side, on the distribution end, where in the past 2 weeks, I've gotten questions from quite large groups going, can you get this thing down to the room level, right? The unit level, as opposed to the property level? Because one of the pitches was obviously, hey, you can simplify cross-reference tables here. If you use this unique ID, just add one column to your table. That's great. You don't have to do anything else. You already have a lot of columns in your cross-reference table. Just add this one, and hey, guess what? In the future, lots of other people use this. You only need that one column. You can get rid of all that other crap and all the inconsistencies and all the people you have doing that. And isn't this great? Now they're saying, rationalizing those hotels down the property, it isn't good enough to just say, here's the low price. Right. So you have that on the distribution side, and then the hotel industry hasn't quite reckoned with it yet, but I predict they're going to figure it out really quick on attribute-based selling when they go, oh yeah, we're going to have to sell these things on a unit basis, on a daily basis, and how we play Tetris with that stuff is going to get really hard, and we've got to be down at this very granular level, and a room category ain't going to cut it. Yeah,
well, I want to add to that real quick, and unfortunately I have to drop. So I won't go into my attribute-based selling rant. I am conflicted on attribute-based selling.
Oh yeah.
But let's put that aside for the moment. What Airbnb has tapped into, for better or worse, and I think this is part of that too, Robert, or at least I think it will be in the future, and I suspect you know this also, or have thought about this as well, is that we have talked for years in the hospitality industry, ignore digital. We've talked about personalizing experiences for guests, right? Yeah. And what Airbnb has managed to do successfully is they are able to personalize the experience for the guests on a per stay basis in a way that hotels are not, because every room is different, right? They're not differentiating the product. They're not differentiating the brand. They're differentiating the space that you stay in.
Every host is different, right? Because
I'm so sorry, Robert. We're saying the same thing. They just got there a different way.
Yeah,
they said we're going to find a host.
That home is an expression of that host, right? That was their whole thing. Yeah.
But what I mean to say is they have given a window into a differentiated experience for every stay, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
That's my point. They're the portal to that differentiated experience.
Yep.
And in time, hotels may find that today, how we have one lobby and two buildings sometimes. We've got the Hilton and we've got the Hampton, right, out with a common lobby. Yep. There's absolutely zero reason why in the future, if we find this makes sense, that you could have, Hampton, Hilton, Hampton, Hilton. You could have Hampton, Hilton, Hampton, Hilton, based on, Hampton Hilton Courtyard, based on the needs of that market and the like, and saying we're going to differentiate the room, and the website or the distribution channel or the app or the whatever it is a window into, I don't want to book this hotel. I want to book this need. I want to book this specific thing. And so you have to be able to do it at a room level from a distribution perspective, or else you can't actually compete with what Airbnb does naturally.
Yeah, there's one, and this was years ago. There's an Element, and I think it's in a loft and an Element that maybe are in the same building. It's the same thing. They actually have two lobbies. You turn left versus right, which I think they've got to fix it at some point.
They have one of those in Chicago. There's a Hampton and a something other Hilton brand. It's not a Hilton.
Dallas too. Downtown Dallas is a
there are actually McCormick Place in Chicago. There's a triple one. Hyatt has like three of them stacked up, right?
Right.
But anyway, on this one, it was funny. I was talking to the general manager, and this was probably 5 years ago, and I said, "Oh, so when you come here, where do you stay?" Well, Element's a long-term stay. They go, "Well, what I do is I stay in the Element because it's a nicer room and it's only $10 more a night, and then I hang out at the loft, right? Because that is the cooler place, and all that sort of stuff." And it's like, right. Yeah, so it's just kind of a meaningless. It should be different room category. They could have done it with room categories and said, "Yeah, we've got some nice, junior suites here or something like that, and here's what we are. We're a really cool hotel that does this, and hey, we're perfectly."
And that's how you compete with Airbnb going forward.
Absolutely, yeah, and you don't have to be on.
I really do have to drop. I'm way past time.
Yeah, Tim. People want to find you. Where do they go?
They can find me at timpeter.com. I'm TC Peter on Twitter, Tim Peter on most of the other social channels. That's it.
Podcast.
timpeter.com/podcasts.
Which is an excellent podcast, by the way.
And on Clubhouse, he's Ed St. Ange for some reason.
No. I just throw Tim Peter's name in. Tim Peter is the bait I put on the hook when I do the thing.
I was on Clubhouse for a little while yesterday. I try to go on Clubhouse for a little bit every single day. I just wasn't available at noon yesterday. That's the only thing.
That's all right. Yeah, and you can buy, as for anyone, you can always, if you ever want to make a room, just put it under the Hospitality Club. You're good. I think you're on the list on there, so it's all.
All right, cool. Gentlemen, always a delight to see you. And I say gentlemen because you're all that's left, but also Adele, who left earlier. Great seeing you. Great stuff this week. Be well, everybody. Have a great holiday weekend if you're
Yes,
celebrating
happy
this
Easter.
weekend. And then I will see you next week if all goes well. I will be here next week. I know I will not be here 2 weeks from now. So
Okay.
Next week, I want you to play us out with a little bumper music on the way out.
Oh, and just so you know, Tim, that music you heard earlier, very good on the 70s identification. That was the Rolling Stones song "Bitch," which is a great guitar riff, and the ringtone for my wife. So that's
You're not right.
Exactly.
So can I tell a stupid story? It has nothing to do with hotels, but a stupid story. When I was in college, I majored in music. I've said this multiple times. One of the classes you took was ear training, right? And part of ear training was things like identifying, pitches, right? So this is do, do, sol, do, right? That kind of thing. But another part of it was also identifying musical periods based on various insights. And we literally, you'd have tests that they weren't usually for high value, but you would have drop the needle tests. This is back in the era when we still had, well, actually LPs are back, so I shouldn't say this so long ago. But literally, the professor would put on a record and they would drop the needle somewhere in the middle of the piece. And you had to identify the era, the instrumentation. So was this an orchestra? Was this a string quartet? Was this chamber music? Things like that. Yeah. So the era: classical, romantic, baroque, modern, contemporary. The type, the composer, if you could, and the piece, if you could. And you got a certain point value for each thing you got. And so one of the things you were trained about, like people don't, it's nothing you don't think about if you're not a musician, but if you heard things like trombones, right? Yeah. As a for instance, it had to be a later period music. It had to be, the romantic period or contemporary music, because trombones didn't exist until the romantic period as an instrument. Just simple things like that. If you heard a piano, what we call a piano today, which was called the pianoforte when it first came around, as opposed to, say, a clavichord or a harpsichord, it had to be a certain period of music or later, because again, the instrument simply didn't exist. And there was a great way, it was a great way for them to
hammering versus plucking, correct? Yeah.
Pizzicato versus things like various types of chords that you didn't hear because they hadn't invented it. There were chord progressions that wouldn't have been used, or chords that wouldn't have been used. Nonetheless, so it's a skill that you learn. So I can't always identify the band. I can't always identify the song. I was only so good at this in school. But you can usually pick at least the decade is pretty easy, because things sound a certain way from certain decades. I didn't know that Stones record. I like the Stones. I'm not a Stones. I don't listen to the Stones a ton. Never have. I like them. They're a great band. Obviously, one of the great bands of all time. Not my personal vibe, but I get why they're great. So I don't know that I would have picked out that was the Stones specifically, but usually I can get the decade pretty well most of the time, because there's just things you learn to listen for. So.
Okay, so all I know is whenever we play trivia and name that tune, Tim's on my team. Just saying.
Yeah, right? If you're doing 18th century Baroque music, yes.
No.
Robert, you're showing
Handel's water music.
No. In the dodgeball lineup, Tim's on my team. I'm just telling you right now.
but Lauren, I want to give you the full skinny there. Don't forget what I just talked about is the very definition of an educated guess. Yeah, it's educated, but it's a guess.
I will quote Star Trek. I will much rather take your educated guess than most people's facts.
But again, you did that in school. Have you kept up so you can vary, for hip hop versus a lot of variety of rap and things like that? Then
when you get into subgenres, not so much. Decades, I'm usually pretty good. I can usually get a sense of, based on instrumentation or things like that. People were using 808s at a certain time, or 707s at a certain time, or various drum machines, or they were using like an EV drumulator or things like that. So To a degree, sometimes. Better than random chance for sure. My favorite, you were talking about one of your favorite parlor games. One of my favorite parlor games is to go on Wikipedia and see the subgenres that they classify music as sometimes. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, I don't even know what they're talking about. Like, to me, I don't hear that distinction that, they're like, well, this is, proto punk versus,
Yeah.
I can't even think of like some of the nuanced, they're slicing. This is like how many angels on the head of a pin on some of these
Yeah.
genres. And I'm like, yeah, to me, it sounds vaguely like they listen to The Clash and vaguely like they listen to Elvis Costello, and they put that together. So it's more harmonic clash, but I don't know what genre you call it.
One of my favorite videos was a guy that showed how most music now, where it originated from, by simply playing transitional songs by decade.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
One song was the creation of another song based on its nuances that you could be much more explorative than I can, all the way through the process of a later song. And I just like showed that, and I was fascinated by that. That was amazing.
One of my favorite classes I ever took. It was only a 1-semester class, and it was something that if I'd thought I could make a living at it, I probably would have gone into more heavily. But it's something called ethnomusicology, which is basically the sociology of music. It's how does music influence society, and why do societies adopt certain instrumentation or adopt certain themes in their music, or certain types of harmonies or certain types of melodies or certain types of rhythms. And you can see the progression from one thing to the next. Often, not always, often I hear a specific thing and I'm like, oh, sure, that comes from this, that comes from this, that comes from this. They put it together in a new way, which nobody's ever done before. But you can also kind of see the framework underneath. And it's like, well, they pulled a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and then added a new thing. And now you have this whole new genre, right?
And you're like, oh, it's genius. It's Tom Clubb's Genius of Love drum pattern. Oh, wait, that's in everything.
Well, there's a great video on YouTube by a musical comedy trio, actually, called The 4-Chord Song. And what they're talking about is they're up on stage talking about, why haven't we had a #1 hit yet? And the guy says, well, because we haven't produced a 4-chord song. And what do you mean? And then they proceed to take these 4 chords and go through a lineup of about 80 different songs that all use the same 4 chords.
Yeah.
It's a 1, 3, 4, 5 is what it is. It's,
yeah.
I think Journey was the first one they started off with on it.
Or 1, 6, 4, 5, which would be
anyway.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that's very much a thing. Believe me, I'm always impressed. One of the things that always hurt me as a songwriter, truly, and I've written a bunch of songs, but one of the things that always hurt me was I always thought it was cheesy to use one of those chord progressions, so I was always trying to come up with something new. Meanwhile, there's guys, who have hits every single week. Bruno Mars.
He was on the list.
Thomas Rhett in country music, right? Who literally, they're just like, nah, I don't care that it's been done before. I'm just going to write a great song using the same foundation that people have used again and again and again. And, I struggled because I had to be a great artist,
Yeah.
Well, but Tim,
you see how well that worked out, that it had to be new every time. And all these other guys are like, look, we're all pulling from the same toolkit. I'm just using it exceptionally well.
see, I always thought Tim's music was genius. The lyrics having to do with hospitality marketing, though, always
Really hard to fit. Yeah.
just weren't really, yeah.
You would be amazed how hard it is to rhyme with RevPar.
My car.
Mr. Tim, thank you as always. Good to see you.
Driving
I
in
got
my car, thinking about my RevPar.
Went to the bar, thinking about
Yep.
RevPar.
Voiding the cops' radar. Yes.
I would like to say this sounds like the Mormon tubercular choir. Edwin, you all have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
And I will talk to you later. All right, bye.
Now I've got that Robin Williams Animal Fudd thing in my head where driving in my car.
Yeah, we're doing
Elmer
yeah.
Fudd. Oh, wacky rabbit.
So Vic is a friend of mine. I don't think he's in the room. Yeah, he's still in the room. He's been traveling a lot, and he offered up that he wanted to share some of his, and we'll do this next week, obviously. Thanks, Vic. Observations of having stayed at so many hotels in a recent period as to whatever So
That'd be a
we'll
great
get that
Yeah.
information from him.
I
because-
think Vic is only putting that in because he wants the hoteliers listening to start bidding on his next trip. right?
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
I've
Lower
taken
rate
8
them.
trips
give 'em some-
recently.
Is that how it works?
Yeah. Well, we got just a couple minutes left. So, Mr. Roberts, since you were so kind into shoving that list out at a time that we could actually use,
Now, the highlights were Rick Ciani from Three Victors, really smart air guy, went through the U.S. Air travel inflection points, things like that. So that was interesting stuff. But no, they're good. I mean, we could just focus on the Boop and the Rutrow. I mean,
yeah,
that's,
let's
I want to know
talk
about that $300 rental car. I haven't had a chance to read the
that was
article.
the
Oh, we've
Rutrow.
seen that in the news. Yeah, the news of the rental
yeah.
car costs are, if there's even a car available, because that's the other thing that's really irritating people. They're loyalty relationship people that are like, I should walk on water when I walk in your rental office, and they're getting told, sorry, no car.
Oh no,
Don't have any answer.
well, no, because a year ago they were renting cars in some of these destinations in Hawaii for $5 a day, right? Because there was no demand, right? There's like, well, if you get $5 a day, and these people are going to be there for a long time, get a monthly rental. It's like great, right?
Yeah.
You pay off,
Yeah.
pay off a little bit of what you owe. But now, and because they were all running out of money, they sold off a lot of their fleets,
A
right?
lot of inventory.
Hurt didn't
down-
hurt, sold
news,
hundreds
a lot
of
of
thousands
cars
of
off.
cars, right?
Yeah, down here we had a small little fire where when the Hertz, which is corporate offices down here with me in Southwest Florida, they parked thousands of their cars over by the airport, and one not too smart person drove a hot car on the grass that all the cars were parked on, and torched about 2,000 cars.
Oh.
One of those
Brand new.
insurance losses, huh? I bet they were originally from New York.
Yeah, I think it was Tommy
Yeah,
Notes
Joe,
that drove
speaking of
that
something
car.
bad happened to that car. Yeah,
Joey Bag of Donuts parked the car.
exactly. But anyway, they sold off all these cars. So now when things are coming back, like in Hawaii, it's like $300 because there's no supply. You got constrained supply, you've got demand, and they're just letting the price flow up to wherever it goes. I've never seen 300. I mean, I saw some in Florida. Again, this was a couple of years ago. It was $180, $210 a day, which was just
Orlando during peak with spring break. That's not unheard of. And also, my world famous gas station. This was back when gas was $1.80 something. We drove by one time and it was $6 a gallon. It was the gas station closest to the pull off to the rental car drop off by the airport.
No coincidence.
Yeah. Oh no coincidence there. It was astronomical cost per gallon, like 4 times anything you could find anywhere, kind of thing.
And you got the person late for the plane going,
I got to fill up. I'm going to have to pay this,
or I'm going to have to pay 12 to the car rental agency.
Right.
Yeah, and they knew it. And that was the price, man. It was crazy, but it's
interesting.
And down here in Florida right now, if you're near the beach, if you're even within close proximity to the beach, you're full.
Yep.
And Orlando's full. And what was it? I think Ed was pointing out maybe on the Clubhouse or earlier conversation last week on the show. Disney opened up their tickets to stuff, and you can't ride the rides. You can eat the restaurants outside, but you can't go inside, and you can see the cast characters from a distance only, and they are oversold in a waiting list to buy these tickets.
Yeah,
that's how pent up the want to go see this stuff is.
Robert, there was something in your article about Disney doing away with magic bands as well too.
It's all going digital on the phone, right? So Disney doesn't have to put the little thing on your. They're gonna use
the magic band.
Right? Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now all of a sudden,
I think
stations
they
are gonna
figure out
be
getting a magic band off of somebody's wrist and giving it to somebody else and stuff like that. You go, oh wait, no, it's their phone. They aren't going to be passing the phones around, right? So.
But now you get dead batteries, and I can't get in because my battery doesn't work. There's going to be charging
That's
stations.
right. You bet.
Because here's the other thing that happened too. So we took a family vacation to Disney this several years ago, and here's one of the things that happened. You make your reservations, you've got it all on plan, and then one day this magical package appears, and it's got those magic bands in there, and the kids are just going nuts.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a way that you capture. It's part of capturing that magic, and that's why I think that I mean that's a product.
But now it's going to be the tattoo on the back of the neck right there, and it has a little. It's a QR code. It has a couple of ears on the top of it, but yeah, you get that instead, and they'll just scan them. Yeah.
Well, I guess now maybe, and you know what? You bring up something that it brilliant.
Or it'll just be facial recognition. Actually,
Well, no,
that's
no, 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 no. I remember when there was a time when we were starving in business in the Myrtle Beach hotel that we're responsible for at one point, and I did the GPS stuff. This goes way back before GPS was getting integrated into all the phones. It was still a separate item you stacked in your car, but it was in transition. It was getting on the phones, but people were still using them in the car. And I bought a lot of stuff, refurbed ones, and then sent them out as a pre-purchase package where I had a guide from the city we were sending them to, Cincinnati, because there was a lot of people from Cincinnati coming to Myrtle Beach at the time they were pushing the product, of all the things they should see so they don't miss the biggest ball of twine on the side of the road. And it drove them to the doorstep of my hotel. And because of the reduced cost of buying the GPSs, I was able to offer this really cool package, and they got it in the mail, and it was magic. It was physical, tangible, looky this. And all it said was plug it in to bring yourself to your new home in Myrtle Beach.
Nice.
And
I like
it was
that.
it was really cool.
Yeah.
But the thing is that that's the kind of cool stuff right now. Like maybe offering something like when people are making plans for the destination hotels that I'm interested in, that I send them a arrival kit. Because right now conferences, if you notice with conferences, okay, swag bags. They've sent swag bags out to people when you participate in a conference. Or if you're speaking at a conference, they send you your little swag bag that has your little baubles and trinkets and all this kind of stuff as a way of saying that. And then people take it on Instagram. Look, my swag bag came in because of the XYZ conference. It's their way of,
right.
Why not
And they're
translate
doing it
that
right. They're doing it before the conference instead of distributing them at the conference because they can get a
Right.
little bit more
Right,
yeah,
a little bit
advanced,
why can't we
some
send
more
why can't we
registration.
send
Yeah.
face masks out and stuff as and not that's not sexy. I'm not saying that, but things like that says, hey, we're looking forward to you come. We know we're still the world is the way it is. Here's your custom face mask. It has the logo on it or whatever, and it has maybe your little sanitation kit kind of thing, but also in it some cool stuff because all places have a unique something that's noted in their market. It's the saltwater taffy over in Nantucket. It's the key lime cookies in Key Lime. It's the whatever in Key West. It's something. Why can't you mini package some of this stuff and send it as a warm fuzzy of, man, we are looking forward to you showing up.
Right.
Here it
That's
is.
right. We're in Florida. We got a lot of B117 variants down here. So here's a real N95 mask.
There you go. Here's a real one.
You're gonna
You know what? We slapped a sticker on it that says it's ours.
You got a full gas mask going on.
Boom. You know what it is?
hazmat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
But you know what I mean? That I always realize we did the same thing with a resort, a spa resort, that we went zoomed in on zip codes of people that had come from that zip code that came to the hotel that just they weren't producing the revenues. It's a long story to it as to how we did this. I do it in the presentations a lot. But what we did do is we did send snail mail as a reminder to them. No incentive values, no value proposition, just a in the mail physical. Here's a card offer, kind of like going back to old school mentality. We went up 30% in our business by just adding that extra reach and communication that wasn't on an email, wasn't on digital. It was, I got something in the mail. You know, it's a cool idea because what you honestly, Dean, I watched your face when you started talking about that was parental fulfillment of a promise.
That's right.
Exactly.
Look what Dad has brought you.
Yes. Yes, it was.
You know, it's the magic armband. You know, that it's not the product itself. Rubber armbands isn't
It's the excitement.
It's what it represents.
Yes.
It's like, this is real. Look, feel it, touch it. It's real. We're going to do this because here's the thing that makes it all work. We got to think of these things now. This is the stuff now as to what Tim was referring to as differentiation. Why us? You know, I was going to make the example. I think Joe's Crab Shack, personally for me, jumped the shark about 2 years ago before any of all this happened. When they started reusing stuff from closed Joe Crab Shacks and new opening Joe Crab Shacks. Well, Joe's Crab Shack, when it first opened up, was really cool because all their memorabilia stuff in their restaurant was very unique and eclectic. It was literally gathered from garage sales and roadside, picker stuff that they now call picker stuff. And then they created warehouses in Galveston that held all this stuff that they kept accumulating, and it was used in the new openings. And then of course some places weren't successful because they just, anybody that wanted to be a Joe's Crab Shack could. There was, they sold it to anybody, and a lot of them started failing because they just weren't well thought through in the market they were put into, and they brought all that stuff back and they started reusing it, and then people started noticing that it was referring to cities and townships that it wasn't sitting in, like, okay, not really there right now. Applebee's had the same issue with their neighborhood stuff.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of jumped the shark with that because they tried to be unique, and that was an early feature of theirs. This was pretty cool, eclectic shit hanging all over the place.
Yeah.
That turned into a counter effect of, oh wow, this is so trying to be something it's not in my market, and we can learn lessons from that as hotels. We could try to be that super cool, what's unique where we are thing, until it stops being super cool unique because we pushed it too far. We tried to emulate it past stereotyping.
Yeah, well, you violated the brand promise of being local. This is a local feel, and then you go, wait a second, what's wrong with this picture? Here are some things that aren't. This is a generic. It went corporate, right, as opposed to really kind of independent, right?
I know it was kind of funny. It brings me back to when I lived in Houston many, many years ago. This is 90s stuff that we're talking about. And a company I was working for was a barbecue place, and barbecue is a small thing in Texas. And they took over a closed Applebee's. And I remember a woman one day coming and knocking on my door while I was converting it to this barbecue place. And she represented herself as a family member of some astronauts, because we're right down the road from the Houston Center. And she says, I'd like to be able to get my family's pictures back. And I'm like, what? It turned out when Applebee's first opened up and they were being the neighborhood bar, and the family was there, and the family of the astronauts that it came in, they offered to give them pictures signed by their family members that were astronauts to go on the wall, because it was indicative of them being just down the road from the Houston Space Center. This was their local bar. They saw it in the brand promise of what Applebee's was trying to be at the time, as your neighborhood bar. This is my neighborhood place. This is my Cheers, this is where I go, and now that it's not it anymore, they wanted back that property. And I remember my owner going, oh, heck no, I'm just going to take them and sell them. They magically disappeared because I gave them back. Because it's like, dude, no, that's you want to just piss people off, do that. You want to open a barbecue restaurant and then have the very neighborhood that you're trying to support get business from remember the fact that you sold off what they gave to the people that you happen to buy the business from? No. What you do is you give back something they think is theirs, and you invite them into what you're trying to do with it now, and make it the thing that they wanted it to be in the first place, which is their bar, their restaurant. So
can I do one? I think, can we close out with some late breaking important news? Since we've been on the show, CDC new guidance for fully vaccinated travelers, right? Fully vaccinated people can travel in the US without tests or quarantines as long as you wear a mask. If you're fully vaccinated, you do that.
I'm half
you can
vaccinated.
go. Yep. No tests, no nothing.
Hey, Dean, are you a Pfizer?
Yep.
I'm a Pfizer.
I'm a Moderna, man. We're cooler than the Pfizer. Just saying.
Look, I take what I can get.
Oh, dude, I would have. Yeah.
And the same applies to international traveler. If you travel, you can travel internationally according to the CDC. No quarantine. Yep. This is for U.S. travelers if they want to go out and then come back in. If you're fully vaccinated now, I'm not sure. I haven't read it enough to say what's coming in, but that's going to be a big boost.
Deal.
And I think they politically did it to go, okay, they were starting to plateau, right? There's now availability of the vaccines, and now it's like, we've got a demand gap, right?
Yep.
This is not good. We've got
vaccinated so we don't have to ride your butt about
right, because if 40% of the people don't get vaccinated, it's still going to be bad. And they do in Michigan and Florida. They've got this B117 variant, which is not good. It's more virulent and reportedly maybe more fatal, although they're getting better at treating it, right? So I think if that thing was out last year at this time, it would have been bad, right? I
Mhm.
mean, like we're talking just catastrophic, but
That
yeah.
hazmat suit style bad.
Oh, yeah, like, yeah. More virulent, more deadly is not good at the beginning when you don't have and you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So,
No.
but yeah, but that's I just look at it and go, you want to slow down the recovery, folks? Don't get vaccinated. And it's just like, damn it. Yeah. And the number of people I'm running into who I think are normal, logical, regular, no, I'm going to hold off. And it's like, you know what? You're just going to slow things down.
You know,
Congratulations.
to some degree, I can understand that. I wasn't a big, well, I couldn't if I wanted to, but I wasn't really on board with getting my shot in January. I'm kind of thinking, let a few other people get it first. But then
See
a
if
few
they
other
see if
people,
they grow antlers or anything. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
exactly. You know, now we're in March, April, and I wasn't in a position to get it. And I'm like, well, yeah, exactly. None of them grew antlers. It seems to be okay. Yeah, sure.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. There's got to be a, okay, I'm going, and I just got my second one, right? Yeah. Like earlier this week. And yes, first 24 hours, I'm feeling okay. Second 24 hours, I felt like crap. But again, I had COVID. So I got the Moderna one. The first shot was bad because my immune system went, I've seen that
Hey, I've
crap.
seen that before.
I've
Yeah.
seen that spike protein before, and damn it, I know what to do. Not good, right? I was like, this one wasn't as bad, right? But still, I can feel on the shot part, it's warm on that part of my arm, right? And it's like, well, my immune system, which is good. That's what you want. You want the
Okay.
response to be your
I'll
immune
also,
system fighting it, right?
I'll also add to a little bit how you get the shot also determines how you react to the shot from a localization point of view. When you go to your doctor and you get other shots for other things, you're dealing with somebody that does that every day. Okay, all day. Just like when you go get blood taken out, you know the difference between somebody that's been doing it for a while and the people are like, "Where's the vein?" You know, and you okay. Oh, Robert, we lost your audio, dude. Uh-oh. That happens to you. No, no. So anyway, what I'm saying is that you're dealing with mass vaccination. I even watch them on TV when they're talking and they're showing their Band-Aid arm, that the little spot that they actually got pricked, the Band-Aid didn't even cover it because they just slapped it on the arm and it wasn't even over the place where they
They
put the
missed.
Band-Aid. You know what I mean? And I'm not taking anyway. I so much appreciate everybody that's contributing to the success of the distribution of the vaccine. Please understand that. But the difference between I do it every day, here's the slow progression of the needle so that the body can absorb the fluid and to you're in a line with a whole mess of people in line, boom, bam, you just shove it in. It creates a fluid area. And that can create the physical reaction in the local area, that worm and stuff like that. Robert, dude, no.
Uh,
No.
I will say the nurse who did mine was incredible. Because by the way, I'm a little bit of a wimp when it comes to shots. I'll be the first person to admit that. And it was a mass vaccination place, and I got in there. She got my sleeve up. So I mean, it was like less than a second, and she was done.
And I would say that's something
no,
that knows how to do it. And I think everyone's going to get better at it that's doing it already now. I'm not by any means saying that it's just sometimes because of how the actual Robert, you back? Say something.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we are.
You're back.
It's I don't know. It's a live webinar thing. No, I was going to say I got the same shot from the same person who's very good. The guy's give me a farmer. He knows what he's. First one completely could not feel anything, right? Just boom, done. Second one felt it a little bit, but just a little, nothing like he's doing it wrong. But it's not. It's the reaction. It's not the actual shot, the injection.
No.
It's in this case, it's the immune system reaction, which goes, damn it, that's where it came in. Send some antibodies, heat that damn area up, do whatever, and
definitely. I'm not saying that by any means. I'm certainly not a medical person, but I do know the difference between bang, bang, boom versus that boom in makes a difference as to how quickly the body has a chance.
And in Dallas, let me tell you, I was in a CVS yesterday picking up prescription, and there was a long line for these. I don't know exactly what was slowing them down. But there had to be 12, 15 people in line to get back, which is good, but you don't want it to be like, oh, well, you make and this is CVS, which is doing appointments every X minutes and stuff like that. And you kind of go, hey guys, you got to keep you don't want people showing up and going, oh, that's not worth it. And it's slow and you're going to wait 2 hours and your time isn't, it's like, come on. Because they have all these drive-through areas. The drive-through ones, I think, are going just like smashingly well, right? You just get in line and it's like bump, 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 bump. So I don't know. But
I hope everyone keeps getting their vaccinations, because it is a light at the time. I feel tell me if you guys felt the same way. After getting your first vaccination, you actually began to solidify your thought of future tense actions. Like, I actually believe, wow, I think I can begin to comfortably feel on a calendar when I think I can go do things.
Right.
Where before it was when I can, I think I will. Now it's I think I can on these certain dates. It's like I'm looking towards the end of September with high tech as a legitimate, you know what, I really would like to go.
We might do that.
I'd like to go to the HSMAI events. As much as I poo-poo on HSMAI in the sense of all of the things, I value what HSMAI is supposed to be, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there.
But they're putting rock and the digital marketing both one day things together with high tech, and it's going to be a bit of a traffic jam of all the stuff, like always.
It's going to be. But I think
I look forward to the traffic jam. I want that.
I think what's going to happen is the excitement of doing that. People aren't going to mind the inconvenience of the multiplicities of I have 3 places I want to go, but you know what? I love the fact I even have 3 choices. I'll be like, okay, I'll do this one, but I'll do this over here. I'll just be happy to think that there's that interaction capability.
And it's in Dallas. I don't have to get on a plane.
You just drive down the road.
Welcome, stay with Robert.
That's right.
He did offer to everybody watching the show, should you need a place to go for high tech, Robert has limited space, but I'm sure he'll sell every square inch of it if he could.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to take the airline approach. We're going to stack people vertically for sleeping things. We'll strap you into the wall, and you'll be good. So
duct tape in the driveway. Expensive duct tape. All right, gentlemen, we are well past 2 hours by any stretch. I sincerely appreciate all the time. And Robert, as always, thank you for your well-curated list. And as a reminder to everyone, you can get signed up to get your own list from Robert, no cost, which is rare in these worlds of good quality content. You can go to bit.ly/rockcheetah, lowercase, no space, and sign up for his newsletter, which I thoroughly, highly recommend. I wouldn't necessarily say that every Friday morning you're going to be opening up an envelope from it, but somewhere along Friday's timeline.
Sometimes late Thursday, sometimes early Friday, sometimes later on Friday. Normally not past 11 on Friday. Normally not. But
it's somewhere along the line you will get that amazing and it is well worth the time to go through. It really is a great encapsulation as to things you should be concerned about categorically within the industry that week.
Well, and I have to say the open rate is close to 47 or 40%.
There we go.
47%. The open rate's close to 40%, and the click-through rate off of that is overall is 12.6%. So what's 12.6 divided by 40? It's 30 some percent, which is great. So
I recommend it.
That's not bad. So
with that in mind, Mr. Robert, if people want to find you and or communicate with you, how is it they can do so?
Robert K. Cole on social media or rockcheetah.com.
Mr. Dean, all things that you are doing. And of course, I am going to keep pestering you, for your podcast, because I think the world has shifted dramatically.
I've got some content for that. So coming.
Okay. I'm I'm saying. But for all other things in relationship other than the podcast, where is it they can find you, and what is it that
so we've got basecampmeta.com and metasearchmarketing.com. If you need to learn about metasearch and what to do with it, what it is, how to run it, and so forth, that's where you go to Basecamp Meta. If you need somebody to do metasearch for you, that's where you go to metasearchmarketing.com. And if you're that small hotel that's heard about these free booking links on Google and you have zero technology and you're thinking, boy, I sure wish I could do that, I can help you make that happen.
There he is. With that, we do. For those who have the Clubhouse app on iOS, which for God's sakes, eventually they'll get it on Android. so that we can have Robert in there. Maybe I think Robert is the reason why. Anyway, never mind.
It's not. My understanding from the latest I've read, it's not going to be until like July or August, maybe on Android.
Yeah, that's going to be over the shark for them.
Their developers are kind of not saying here's what the timeline is, which is pretty interesting. That the way they developed it must have been just. I don't get it. I don't understand. I can see launching only on Apple and saying, okay, it's iOS and it's scarcity, but they must have just used a complete iOS tool set. Or so. I mean, they were not planning on it doing what it did at all from a product perspective. I don't know who their product manager is, but they probably have a different one.
I mean,
yeah, they probably do.
Their developers.
Yeah,
because I can honestly say with what Spotify's planning on doing, which is almost a carbon copy, from what I understand, of what Clubhouse is.
Yeah.
Okay. Facebook, Twitter's off base with the 10-person room thing and stuff. Good luck, have fun. That's great.
Yeah.
Have whatever. But Facebook, Instagram combination audio version of itself with the ability to connect with who you connect with on Facebook will be interesting, except for one big thing. It's still freaking Facebook. And I want something other than Facebook. I'm sorry. I'm not happy with them. They really, I'm just being critical. But anyway, but I think what Spotify is
Instagram's fine with you, right? No, I'm just
no, not even Instagram now.
That's a big separation there.
Facebook's way they were handling business, their darkness to what they do to response and so forth is a frustration point beyond extreme for me right now. This arbitration of, you were just going to suspend these Instagram accounts. No version, no reason, no recourse. Just blink. Yeah. And we're not telling you why. We're not telling you what we're going to do about it. And then all of a sudden they come back on, I have to review your Instagram accounts reinstated. And I'm not talking about mine. I'm talking about the ones I'm connected to for other reason business-wise, where I'm like, what went wrong? What did I do wrong so I don't do it again? Some freaking depth anyway, that's just a whine. But the idea what Spotify's thinking about doing, because they have this infrastructure already with their podcasts, with their music, with their audio culture, that's a scary one that Clubhouse could easily go from 0 to 0.
Lauren, on Instagram, the things you were posting, it may not be illegal to do those things to animals, but it is immoral.
Hey, dude, I just took the pictures you sent me and said, they must be okay. Robert does them, right?
All I can say, Lauren, it was very bad.
Actually, on Instagram, I am a nobody. The Lauren Gray Dockwell Dangler of me, which is the
I've seen that.
Yeah.
She's dominant in the world.
She's on Clubhouse too.
Yeah. So, anyways, for this show and all previous 294 shows, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. Look for show number 295 to replay this. We also do a weekly podcast, which also has a partial recap of this show, which is at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/podcast. We also do a Clubhouse, which is where all this started from, Monday through Thursday at noon Eastern, called Hospitality Marketing Club. We do a room each day. We were picking topics, but I have come to realize that it also is a deterrent for people that may not either, one, be interested in the topic, even though the audience picked what we're going to talk about, and two, the singularity of picking a topic sometimes excludes people based on interest as well, whether they want to contribute or listen to it. So we're leaving it more open-ended on a daily basis. We might lead with a topic, but it certainly doesn't mean we stick with that topic. And we're getting a resurgence back of audiences because everybody else had jumped on board and started doing their own rooms. People would jump in to see what they were doing, only to realize it was not quality content. I honestly, truly can say with what Stuart Butler and Ed are doing as a hospitality marketing club room in the morning at 8 a.m. is excellent. It's like a morning version of what we do at noon.
Aside from early in the morning and all that.
Except for early in the morning for those who that's their time.
They don't want to talk to West Coasters at all. So that's how they filter them out.
Yeah. So for depending upon the time of day, you get a time of audience. Yeah. And because of time zones and also just personal schedules. It's not like somebody in the Eastern 8 a.m. is not a time that's a bad time for them, but it may not be the time that they're most able to listen to something. And noon at lunch while they're snarfing a burger or something that might be. But the cool part is that there's enough audience on this platform now that those time differences make a difference on audience attendance. So,
and my understanding is Stuart and Ed, on everyone who attends their clubhouse at 8 a.m. gets a Tesla Model S. I think.
Now I knew there was an incentive to why people were listening.
I think that's what they were doing. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So if anybody wants to, what I'm trying to say is anybody wants to pick up a 5 p.m. Eastern, yeah, go ahead.
That's right.
Anyway, with that, gentlemen, thank you for being the duration that it has been for the show today, and for everyone that listened and watched us during this entire course and play us back. We of course have the replay of this at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, or 11:30 a.m. Sydney time on Wednesdays, and 11:30 a.m. London time on Wednesdays. We do the replay of the show for better time zone compatibilities. So with that, thank you, everyone. And we'll see everyone next Friday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern for the live show again.
Probably not me, but that's okay.
No, oh come on!
I'll try to get you. I'll try to get you a list though.
Okay. All
Hey,
right, well,
Good Friday, my meeting's canceled. What they, I've got nice, devout, religious clients who normally eat up my time. So what can I say?
All right. And happy Easter, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. Remind me
Bye.
of that. Happy Easter. Bye, everybody.
Bye.